start to your day.
Hey, good morning. 7 minutes after 6. Welcome to SAfm. Welcome to SAfm Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. How are you doing this Monday morning? I realize that we're starting the day and we're starting the week, and there are 5 whole days until sort of the weekend rolls around. But maybe we shouldn't think about it in terms of weeks, in terms of days. Maybe we should think about it in terms of weeks. And what I'm really talking about is the countdown to December. Am I pronouncing that correctly? You sort of think to yourself, just what's it going to be like this time a week from now, getting closer and closer to the end of the year. The schools are doing their end of year things. Exams start soon. In fact, exams start this week in my house for both my children. That kind of tells you that things are getting on. Things are beginning to move very quickly towards the end of the year. And I'm sure you might find actually that that's what tells you that the weekend, that the sort of end of the year is coming, the kind of annual weekend, if you like, is beginning to come. I was watching yesterday. I wasn't watching that closely, unfortunately, but catching up with it this morning, the situation in Cape Town. And I kind of had been, unfortunately, expecting that the divisions we see around the world over Gaza would start to emerge in our society. I think there's nothing wrong with that. We must argue, we must discuss, we must debate, we must try and understand each other's points of view. And yet, of course, we're going to inevitably have protests. And I mean, your right to protest is protected, of course, under the Constitution. As I understand the sequence of events, what happened was that on Saturday there was a big sort of pro-Palestinian, pro-people in Gaza march. You could call it, I suppose, an anti-Israel march or an anti-Israel's current actions march. Maybe different people in the protest would have different views on all of that. And there seemed to be no problem there for Keelan Balula, the Secretary General of the ANC. He spoke, and that seemed to go off relatively peacefully from what I can see, from the reports that I can see, and obviously I wasn't in Cape Town this last weekend. And then yesterday it seems the issue started when there was supposed to be a pro-Israel event. Now, some reports suggest that it was a prayer meeting. Some say it was a sort of a show of support for Israel, so different sort of indications of what it was. And then a group of people tried to disrupt this. And I'm not entirely sure if it was planned or if it was spontaneous. And the last time I was at Sea Point on a Sunday afternoon, about a month ago now, I suppose, and then you do see different people doing different things, some people just exercising, some people doing other things. And so maybe, people sort of saw this and felt that they wouldn't accept it or whatever. I don't know. But this is where the disruption happened. And in the end, police had to arrest 4 people. The Jewish community says that a Jewish school was sort of threatened. I don't know how true that is, but they seem to say that. No, they seem to feel that, I should say. The Mayor, Jordan Hill-Lewis, he's called for peace and tolerance in Cape Town, and I suspect that we're going to see this kind of thing happening a little bit more if you look at the situation in the Middle East. And the situation in Gaza, of course, really quite scary. So still we see that the 2 largest hospitals in Gaza are shot, the Al Shifa and the Al Quds hospital. The one hospital, what Al Jazeera is reporting, is that there are thousands of people inside the hospital complex, and anyone who tries to move around outside is being shot by snipers. In other words, there's snipers outside a hospital, and whenever someone tries to move around near the hospital, they get shot. Whereas the people inside the hospital can stay there. But now people can't move. Do I need to tell you that this is a hospital? I mean, it's the most astonishing thing. Israel's still telling Palestinians to move south, but still, as Al Jazeera reports, still bombing an area called Khan Yunis, which is in the south, so still dangerous there. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, still saying no ceasefire. He did an interview with CNN, and he says no ceasefire there. And then he says that it's too early to sort of have a conversation or an argument about who's responsible for what actually happened and whether he bears responsibility. There's a really incredible sort of story developing, I think, around the Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi. And Daily Maverick published this, but I think the starting point perhaps was a video that was posted on TikTok. And the Gauteng Premier was speaking at a Sanko event over the weekend, South African National Civics event, organization event. And he was talking about the police wardens. And this is the direct quote, okay? This is what Panyaza Lesufi said, as quoted in the article, but also, as I can see on TikTok. He says this: "We have trained these young people to be police wardens. You, as a police minister, are refusing to recognize them. Your days are numbered. We can't when young people are assisting us to fight crime. You want to undermine them. You can't when we have trained young people to be on the streets in our townships and protect our young people when they are studying at night in our schools. You don't want to recognize them. We say to this minister, give us the power for these young people to have the power to get guns so they can protect our townships and chase away criminals in our own areas. That's the direct quote from the Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi. And there's several things that sort of stand out for me on this. The one is that he wants to give people who, as I understand it, have had 1 or maybe 2 months training, guns. I mean, just think about this for a minute. And we had a mediated conversation on this because there's a similar thing in Cape Town, which is the sort of LEAP officers. They have a lot more training, by the way, 2 or 3 years training. I'd need to check on that. It may not be that long, but still a lot more training. The second is that Panyaza Lesufi seems to be going against the police minister, Becky Cele, as I understand it. The only other minister who you could sort of say it was the Justice Minister, Ronald Lamola, who's also formally refused to sort of recognize them or refused to recognize them formally. But this is astonishing. Minister, your days are numbered. Now, in my understanding of our politics, people who say that around Becky Cele, I don't know, what do you reckon? Stanza? I mean, would you say that to Becky Cele? Your days are numbered. Zelma is sort of shaking her head. Maybe Panyaza Lesufi can only say it in Gauteng, not in KwaZulu-Natal. I don't know, but I was like, wow, this is quite a thing to say. And in the meantime, Fikile Mbalula, the ANC Secretary General, sort of told bodies of the ANC no public spats ahead of the election, and that I think is after what happened in KwaZulu-Natal over the holding of the World Cup last weekend. Still an astonishing story. And then the Minister of Home Affairs yesterday, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, talking about big changes, and this has sort of been formally proposed in a white paper, big changes to the way that refugees, asylum seekers are being dealt with. And he says at the moment, for example, it can take 10 years to decide if someone can live here permanently, which just doesn't work. I mean, obviously it doesn't work. He says that there's no way of knowing how many undocumented foreign nationals there are in the country. The census, we understand, says well below 3 million. But I think there are some questions sort of emerging around all of this. And he wants to change things completely. I think it's obvious the system isn't working. I mean, we can all see that. And so some change is coming. That's a big story in the news bulletin. I don't know if these changes will be able to come before the election, though. And I think that's what's going to be difficult. You know the number, 086 000 2032. You may have a comment about what Panyaza Lesufi said, the Gauteng Premier, about crime wardens and about crime. SMS 41391. You tweet SAfm Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice note to 0614 104 107. Good morning. It's Monday morning. It's 6:15.
The Daily News Diary on SAfm.
Loanda Maome, good morning. How are you doing?
Stephen, are you good?
I'm well, thank you. Welcome back, by the way.
Thank you, man. Listen, it's good to be back. Listen, I saw the video.
Yeah.
It's on the timeline on X, on the timeline of a certain engineer who used to be a CEO of a certain parastatal.
Right.
Yes.
Yes,
That
okay, I'm
video
with
is
you.
there. Yes. So I saw the video and I thought,
I mean, for a premier from the ANC to say to a police minister, your days are numbered.
yeah.
But I think underneath that is maybe the bigger issue, which is, frankly, for me, I have no problem in our society with a police officer having a gun. I've made this point many times. I'm not brave enough to be a police officer. And yet, to give it to someone who's only had 1 month, maybe 2 months training?
Yeah, you know what? I don't have a lot to say about that. Suffice to say, very tricky days ahead, Stephen. Days ahead.
Yeah.
Anyway, Stephen, on to the courts now, Stephen. The rape case against Timothy Omotoso and his two co-accused, Zugi Swasito and Lusanda Solane, will continue in Gqeberha in the High Court this morning. This after their application for mistrial in the case against Omotoso was denied by Judge Emma Skuman last month. So I guess, but of course there were some charges that were dropped. I think about 31 of the 60 charges were actually dropped. So it continues this morning. And also in courts in Pretoria this morning, Stephen, investigating officer Sergeant Vusumuzi Mukhane is expected to be back on the stand at the Senzo Meyiwa trial as the state intends to lead evidence pertaining to automatic vehicle location system. This is tracking system of the vehicle, of course, within that in that trial, within a trial, to try and challenge the admissibility of those confession and pointing out statements allegedly made by accused number 1 and 2.
Whenever I hear the phrase trial within a trial, I just know a delay is on the way.
Of course.
It's going to take a long
just
time.
means maybe another year onto the
Yes,
trial.
unfortunately.
Yes. Still in the court, Stephen, you probably saw this last week. The suspect accused of the brutal murder of a colleague at Leseding Hostel in Carltonville is expected to appear in the Western Area Magistrates Court. The perpetrator is alleged to have stabbed the victim multiple times, then took a selfie next to the body,
Wow.
which then found its way to social media.
Oh, my
The
word.
video is absolutely horrendous.
Can you imagine?
I wouldn't
oh.
recommend anyone
No.
goes and watches
No,
that.
no, no, no.
It's
Sheesh.
absolutely a sad story there. And Stephen, a 34-year-old man who allegedly severely assaulted his 5-year-old daughter is expected to appear in the Senegal Magistrates Court for bail application. The man allegedly beat up the child and poured glue on her face. Your child, Stephen.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's horrible. Yeah, no.
Finally, Stephen, following the meeting with UCT and Higher Education Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, the matter of transformation at the institution received criticism from the committee. Even though the recent report done at UCT looked at governance issues, the MPs felt that the larger issue at UCT is transformation more than the governance issues that were highlighted by that report that was published last month.
Yeah, more reports
So we're
like
definitely
that, yeah.
looking at that story, Stephen.
Indeed. Leander Mahome, thank you very much indeed. More to come. We'll be listening on the radio. You're with SAfm, 18 minutes now after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAfm.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, partly cloudy, becoming cloudy. Isolated showers and thunder showers, 16 and 28. Johannesburg, partly cloudy. Cloudy later. Isolated showers, thunder showers, 15 and 27. Vereeniging, partly cloudy, becoming cloudy. Isolated showers, thunder showers, 16 and 30. Bombela, cloudy. Isolated showers, 16 and 18. Polokwane, cloudy at times, 15 and 21. Mahikeng, fine at first, otherwise partly cloudy, 18 and 34. Vryburg, fine, 10 and 35. Mangaung, fine, 12 and 30. Kimberley, fine, 13 and 32. Uppington, fine, 15 and 36. Cape Town, fine, a fresh to strong southerly wind, 15 and 26. George, partly cloudy, becoming cloudy by the evening. A light to moderate southeasterly wind, 11 and 21. Gqeberha, cloudy, a chance of light rain, a light southwesterly wind, 13 and 23. East London, partly cloudy, becoming cloudy, rain by the late afternoon, a light southwesterly, 13 and 21. eThekwini, cloudy, isolated showers, a moderate southwesterly, 17 and 20. Richards Bay, cloudy, isolated showers, a moderate southwesterly, 18 and 22. And Pietermaritzburg, morning fog, otherwise cloudy, isolated showers, 12 and 18.
It's about a little more than just an X on that ballot paper. It's about self-gov, knowing what nyava, what I want, where I'm going, and who I want to take with on this journey. To me, it's not just a vote. It's my democracy. I own it. So show up and register for what you stand for. From Giyani to Umlazi, Pitori to Matatiel. Bring your green bar-coded ID, smart card or temporary ID certificate. Stations open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 18 to 19 November 2023. Or register online by going to elections.org.za or call 0800 11 8000. It's your democracy. Own it. Brought to you by the IEC.
Ford is turning 100, and there's never been a better time to buy a brand new Ford. We're giving away 100 vouchers worth an amazing 50,000 Rand each, and the sensational grand prize of us paying for one lucky winner's Ford. It's the celebration of the century. Visit a Ford dealer, buy a new Ford, and win. T&Cs apply.
The beauty, power, elegance, and speed of horse racing.
The passion at the heart of horse racing diligence.
Where these magnificent creatures and their skilled jockeys compete for glory.
Racing today.
Catch it live on Mondays to Fridays on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com.
Hashtag horses of great character. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
21 minutes now after 6 the time. Well, plenty going on, as you know, in Gaza. The number of Palestinians who've been killed by the Israeli attacks is now over 11,000, while the Israeli death toll from the Hamas attack 6 weeks ago has been revised down from 1,400 to 1,200. Al Jazeera this morning reporting that the Al Quds hospital in Gaza now has thousands of people trapped inside it. anyone who tries to move out of the hospital is being shot at by Israeli snipers. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, giving an interview to CNN in which he says it's too early for him to consider taking responsibility for allowing the Hamas attacks to happen. As you know, are many different elements to all of this. Roland Henwood's a political scientist and commentator at the University of Pretoria. Roland, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
So the Israeli attacks now, we're seeing more and more international condemnation, protests here, big protests in Cape Town over the weekend, protests in many, many places. Can Israel continue to ignore so much of the rest of the world for such a long period of time? The words coming out of the United Nations clearly are getting more and more desperate.
Yes, I think one has to differentiate, though. There's a lot of discussions going on behind the scenes. There's definitely a lot of engagement between leaders, the US and others, continuously engaging with leaders, especially in the region. And one doesn't know what's being discussed. There's very little information on that, but that would probably focus on a number of things. Firstly, it would focus on the ongoing military engagements, the various battles that are taking place. It would definitely center on how to deal with the humanitarian issue. It would definitely center on probably what happens next. How do you get this process to stop the fighting that is, and how do you get to some kind of engagement? Because clearly this cannot go on. We see this is a repeating pattern. So there would be lots of discussions. I think the main issue is in a popular context. In other words, people participating in marches and protests. Again, we see a very divided picture. There's a lot of protest against what Israel is doing, but there are also more and more protests in support of not Israel as such, but anti-Semitism, etc. So it's a very mixed picture, and there's a lot of information, and I think one needs to be careful. And I'm not discounting the humanitarian dimension, but one needs to be careful because there's a lot of propaganda that underlies and informs a lot of the public opinion on what is happening there.
One of the key questions, and Roland, I keep coming back to this, which is what is Israel's kind of real aim? So they're forcing Palestinians to move south. They're still bombing some areas in the south. People who support the Palestinians, and I think many Palestinians themselves, believe that Israel may actually want to push them into the Sinai Desert. In other words, as I would understand the geography there, into Egyptian land. So then Gaza would be, I suppose, when you consider Netanyahu says they want to take security responsibility for Gaza, that would kind of be Israeli, part of Israel. I mean, could that happen? Apart from that, I don't understand what the end game is for Israel. I mean, do they have a strategic aim in mind?
I think that's the key question. And from what one sees, and I must say, I'm looking at it from South Africa. What one sees is this a war to ensure security, or is it a war of vengeance? And the impression more and more is created that this is fueled by hatred and vengeance. And in other words, it goes way beyond what is allowed in terms of self-defense and war. I will say this, that it's not only Israel that is still participating in the fight. There's a lot of missiles still being fired, and there's definitely Hamas fighters that are pretty much up to it and engaged in the actual war itself. The problem is it's an urban war. It's in a very dense, very big city complex, and that is almost impossible to have this kind of operation and think nothing is going to happen to civilians, and that's illegal. The other issue is the bombing campaign that is continuing, that is devastating infrastructure, and it is now closing hospitals. And that is not what is going to sustain Israel, and I think this is the question that you ask. And it's not clear what the end game is. Clearly, there's no way Israel can push people into Palestine, because then they're going to have to confront Egypt. And Egypt has been very clear. They will not allow that. They cannot allow that for their own security in the long term. On the other hand, there are also questions being asked, because regional countries have, to a large extent, been complicit in a way that they have not really pushed back as hard as they could have in the past against what is happening in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And we saw a little bit of that yesterday in the meeting of the 57 heads of state meeting on this discussion. so there's a lot of division, there's a lot of mistrust also in the broader context of what some refer to the meeting as the Muslim world, others refer to it as the Arab leadership, and that all makes it very complex. And in this process, Israel is pushing, but again, the question of what the end game is, and here we must come back to one person, and that is Netanyahu. What is he really trying to achieve? We know that he's lost a lot of support and legitimacy because many people feel that he's divided Israel, his dividing leadership style is actually at the foundation of what gave Hamas the opportunity to attack and then caused all the strain of events that is causing misery and hardship to everyone that is involved in that region.
Roland Henwood, thank you. Very sobering. Political scientist and commentator at the University of Pretoria.
This is SAfm Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
You know, I had it on my list of news stories, Mamelodi Sundowns. Sorry, Sundowns, I owe you an apology. Congratulations.
Yes, history made. They are the first ever African Football League champions. 2-0 was their second leg victory over Wydad Casablanca, sealing a 3-2 aggregate win. Here's their coach, Rulani Mokwena.
To get to the final, we needed an incredible performance against Al Ahly in the semi-final at home. And the Yellow Nation was behind us all the way. Today, once again, I think they made an incredible contribution, and they sang and they supported the boys throughout the 90 minutes. And for that, we are extremely grateful to them, and we thank them for their love and their support.
On to cricket, and it's Shreyas Iyer and KL Rahul who hit centuries as India made it 9 wins from 9 in their group stage games. They had a 160-run victory over the Netherlands. In reply, the Netherlands started well but fell away to be bowled out for 250. Tennis, the Mets-born and bred Ugo Humbert crowned champion of the Moselle Open at the weekend. The Frenchman defeated Alexander Shevchenko 6-3, 6-3 in 1 hour, 7 minutes. Here's Ugo Humbert.
Yeah, it was my dream when I was young to win this tournament. Just amazing. I have a lot of feelings now, but I can describe it. It's so incredible to win here in my hometown, in front of my family. To finish strong like this, it's just an amazing feeling.
And finally, golf. Max Homer shot a final round 66 to win the Nedbank Golf Challenge at the Gary Player Country Club at Sun City yesterday. The American finished the weekend at 19 under, 4 shots clear of Nicola Hygaard on 68 and a further stroke ahead of Torbjorn Olesen on 69. Here's the winner, Max Homer.
It's special. It's been a special week. I really believe even if I would have come up short today, this is one of the more memorable weeks I've ever had. The safari last weekend with JT and Jill and my wife Lacey was, I just don't even know how to put it into words. So to get to come out here the next week and put the cherry on top was special. All the vibes were good this week.
And that's how we'll wrap your sport up. For now, we'll bring you more headlines on Sunrise. For SAfm Sport, I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thank you very much indeed. We'll speak to the Cooperative Governance Minister, Thembi Karimeng, in the next half hour around coalitions and service delivery. That to come. You're with SAfm leading the conversation. Stage 2 now, stage 3 later, 6:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, EFF leader Julius Malema has called on structures of the EFF to be on standby all the time to address the needs of the communities. Addressing the Northwest Ground Forces Forum at Mahikeng Civic Centre, Malema cautioned these party structures against listening to disgruntled residents during elections period only. Home Affairs Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi says the establishment of an immigration division to deal with the granting of visas is as fundamental as the current system. Cabinet has published the white paper on citizenship, immigration and refugee legislation, which intends to overhaul the weak, unworkable and exploited system in the country. And the World Health Organization says the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City, where thousands of people are reportedly trapped, has ceased to function. It says constant fighting and bombing in the area had all but knocked out the hospital's power, significantly increasing fatalities. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAfm guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Here's the big one. The N14 coming out of Pretoria on your way down through Centurion, queuing for absolute kilometres and queuing very heavily this morning. Big crash scene down by Jean Avenue, just before Jean Avenue. You'd want to stay off that N14. You've got options. You've got the old Joburg Road. You've got Borta Avenue. You've even got the R21 down towards the N1. So lots of options to avoid the N14 going south. The N1 into the sinkhole restrictions down by the R21. That's already looking very busy. We're hardly sort of underway this morning, and that traffic is already parking back through to Garsfontein Road. The N1 into Joburg Swilly from the south is queuing heavily up through Devlin. Problem there seems to be inside the Dipcliffe interchange as you take the N1 ramp to the N12 down towards Uncle Charlie's. Durban, a crash on the N2 running north before Queen Nundy Drive. That's a heavy queue from sort of Westwood Mall territory. You're backlogging all the way into that, and it's in the right lane, so all that volume coming south after Kuamashu down through Queen Nundy towards Inanda Road, also backlogging as well. Cape Town Marine Drive already slowed down towards the Dolphin Beach area. And plenty of traffic on Cape Town's N2 this morning. Motorists sitting from the airport area through to a point just before Jan Smuts Drive as you come through Athlone Pinelands area. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
The business update on SAfm.
Ray Machlaka, good morning. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Good morning.
Don't count the days, count the weeks. Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
Well, both markets are mostly down. The investor focus this week will largely be on consumer inflation data in the US during October. The inflation rate is expected to have reached 3.3%. And US Central Bank Chair Jerome Powell has warned that interest rates may have to still increase further because consumer inflation remains high. And this is worrying investors this morning. In US markets, Nasdaq, Dow Jones and S&P futures are each down 0.4%. In Asian markets, Hong Kong's Hang Seng and China's Shanghai Composite are each down 0.2%. And Japan's market, the Nikkei, is the outlier this morning as it is up 0.1%. And the dollar to the rand is 18.77.
And then unemployment data for the third quarter, we're expecting that this week.
Yeah, on Tuesday or tomorrow, Statistics South Africa will release unemployment figures for the third quarter. And the second quarter, the official unemployment rate fell slightly to 32.6% from 32.9% in the first quarter. Nevertheless, the unemployment rate remains stubbornly high and above the pre-COVID pandemic average of 26%. Most economists expect the unemployment rate to have worsened during the third quarter. The economy is not growing fast enough to create new jobs, and most sectors of the economy are in decline because of Eskom blackouts and the logistics crisis.
And retail sales for September also coming out this week.
Yeah, on Wednesday, Statistics South Africa will also release retail sales data for September. Retail sales volumes in South Africa have registered declines in every month this year. This is a reflection of the financial pressures that consumers are facing, high inflation, high interest rates, and the many petrol and diesel price increases have negatively impacted consumer affordability.
Ray Machlaka, thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate it. Ray, of course, back in an hour's time.
Africa Update on SAfm Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Well, Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, of course, from the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA. We'll talk to him in just a moment. I know he's got updates for you around the elections in Liberia. Other elections, of course, underway at the moment, but Sipho Mantula, he'll be with you in just a moment. Other conversations coming up in the next little while. We'll talk to the Cooperative Governance Minister, Thembi Nkadiming. She's made comments again about how it is that coalition governments simply aren't working at the moment. Well, we'll talk about that. I think the big question really is that, as I understand the maths, the ANC and the Democratic Alliance together would have the votes in the National Assembly to be able to change certain laws around coalitions, but the clock is ticking, and that they would need to do fairly soon. So we'll see if we can look at that as well. All right, Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula from the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA on the line to us now. Sipho, good morning. In Liberia, that runoff presidential election, it's what's the latest?
That is now is 24 hours before to know that it is the neck and neck between George Way and
all right. Unfortunately, Sipho, I don't know what the story is there, but battling to hear from you this morning, I'm afraid. So sorry about that. But we will, of course, hear from Sipho Mantula as we go through the morning and the week together. 13 minutes now to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, I wonder if you heard what Panyaza Lesufi said, the Gauteng Premier, over the weekend, talking about police ministers, talking about police wardens, the crime prevention wardens that he wants to implement in Gauteng. We know that some of them are wearing particular uniforms. He said, we've trained these young people to be police wardens. You as a police minister are refusing to recognize them. And then he went on to say, your days are numbered. It seems to me, I mean, the reading of it that I have, would be that the Gauteng Premier is taking on the police minister. I thought that was astonishing. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I don't know if you've got a strong view on that issue. Also saying we can't, when young people are assisting us to fight crime, you want to undermine them. You can't when we've trained young people to be in the streets in our townships and protect our young people. When they're studying at night in our schools, you don't want to recognize them. We say this to the minister, give us the power for these young people to have the power to get guns so that they protect our townships and chase away criminals in our own areas. I thought that was interesting. Maxwell, good morning. You want to talk about Mamelodi Sundowns yesterday?
Good morning, Buccaneer. How are you, Stephen Grootes?
Why are you calling me a Buccaneer? I don't support Pirates.
Really?
Yeah.
No, just come there and give you a T-shirt because you look like you don't have a team. Or you fancy Sundowns because it's one of the best in Africa there.
Well, it would be foolish not to be friends with Sundowns, Maxwell.
Stevens, there was a concern on that game, but I'll start by saying congratulations to Sundowns for winning the trophy. The support was marvelous. But there was an incident where I will ask maybe your team behind the scenes to call the police to come and confirm that was an explosive or not, because a lot of fear it was installed on that game to think that there was an explosive on that game, while there are other reports saying otherwise, that it wasn't.
So what happened? Was it a firework or something more than that?
Inside the supporters spotted a guy with a suitcase and a lot of things that looks like explosive. Oh. Then that's when the police were called amongst the crowd. They've removed the guy. They went down with him. So there are conflict reports that it wasn't explosive. Sure. The guy was waiting there for the final whistles to put those, what do they call, the celebration or something that is relevant
it's very
on
strange.
the day. Yes.
All right, Maxwell, thank you for that. I wasn't aware of that. I will try and find out a bit more about that. That sounds a bit scary, actually. Andrew on the line from Cape Town. You saw these protests over the weekend. I know there was one on Saturday, and I know there was one yesterday. Did you see them both?
I saw the one yesterday, and let me preface my comments here that I do not support what Israel is doing. I think however evil Hamas's conduct might have been, Israel's response has been inappropriate and disproportionate. But now, having said that, and I speak as somebody who teaches political studies at the university, and I have an interest in politics, although I'm not an expert in Mideast politics. But this was happening just down the road from where I live, and I went to have a look at what's going on. What I saw there was a display of, what should we say, lack of tolerance, anti-democratic behavior, fanatical, religious fanaticism, and in my case, some of the worst racism that ever I've seen. I was standing behind a police line. On the other side, there was this crowd chanting, carrying on, behaving in a very provocative fashion. I was noticed because I was standing behind the police line. Next thing I knew, I had this torrent of racial invective directed against me. And before I knew it, I was surrounded by about 15 or 20 people who were physically attacking me.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. I had a shirt ripped open. Luckily, police were at hand and shuffled me off the scene.
Sure.
But it was pretty horrible.
So, Andrew, I don't know how to... Let me try and approach this very carefully, but do you think people thought you supported one side or another?
I do believe so.
And do you think they thought you supported Israel?
Quite likely. I happen to be, by verbatim description, a white person.
Yeah.
I was seen as such. I was assumed, no doubt, to be supporting Israel. And not only just supporting Israel, but happened to be white. It's as simple as that. and a white person taking our land like Israel is taking our land. And I've never in my life experienced something quite so horrifying. The end result is that I believe that most of the core people involved in this couldn't give a damn about the plight of individual civilians in the Gaza Strip. This was purely a political, religious, opportunistic display of civil disruption of the like of which I've never seen, and it does not bode well for us. It really doesn't.
Israel, Andrew, that must be
very unhappy.
Yeah, Andrew, you must have been very upset. I mean, to get sort of pushed and pulled, and I suppose legally maybe assaulted.
Not really. I mean, in the line of work that I do, political studies and what have you, one tends to get involved in this kind of thing. So I wasn't shocked at all. But I can see that, an innocent bystander, quite literally just walking past there, who had the wrong appearance, could have been attacked and torn to shreds.
Okay.
Sure. Here it is.
Andrew,
Not nice.
No. Andrew in Cape Town, thank you. And I mean, I raised this point at the very beginning of the show that I kind of thought that this would happen at the divisions. This is how we manage the divisions. Peaceful protest, of course, yes. But Andrew, I am sorry that happened. And I mean, there might be other people who see things very differently as well. Craig in Johannesburg. Craig, hi. What did you see over the weekend? You saw something happen with a tow truck.
Yes, I did, Stephen. It was Saturday evening, about 11:20 in the evening. I was heading north along Oxford Road in Dunkeld.
This is in Joburg, Dunkeld, right?
In Johannesburg, yes. And I'd stopped at the intersection with Bompus Road, which enters from the left. It's a T-junction from the left. And I was the second vehicle in the middle lane, and the traffic light was red. And there was a small hatchback that was about to enter the intersection from our left. That hatchback had right of way. And just then, I saw out of the left corner of my eye, one of those tow truck vehicles swerving violently, probably out of my lane into the left lane, which is a left-turning lane, and then swerving back into the intersection and carrying on straight through the red traffic light. The hatchback had meanwhile stopped just in time. It was over the line. In other words, it had entered the intersection, but it wasn't fully in the intersection, and there was no collision. The hatchback then, although the traffic light was green for the hatchback, reversed back, and the traffic light changed, and we went, and the hatchback was still there. So the driver was obviously in shock, as I was.
So the driver, I mean, that small hatchback would have been taken out from your description.
Well, it would have been T-boned on the driver's side. Oof. It was an insubstantial little vehicle. You know, when you hire a vehicle in the A-class, it's one of those. So yes. a big heavy bucky, probably with a bull bar, I didn't see, but they usually have a bull bar in the front, hitting that vehicle at speed, and I would say at least 60 kilometers an hour and accelerating. Sure. That would have been nasty. Probably fatal, I would think.
Sheesh, and it would have hit the driver's side, as you say. Was there any branding for this? I mean, some of the tow truck drivers have branding, some of them don't. I know some people don't have licenses at all, don't have number plates. Was there any branding on the truck?
There was branding on the truck. It was a white truck, and it had that F in the circle, the first help. I see those vehicles around all the time. They were a very recognizable logo, and I posted something on, what's it called? Call Peter.
Hello, Peter, yeah.
Hello, Peter, and invited them to respond. I haven't seen anything yet. But I just felt something has to be done about this, because otherwise this happens and there's just no comeback, and the driver continues with this kind of behavior.
And I mean, if there'd been an accident, we don't know if the bucky would have stayed. So it was first help, you say?
That's the logo that I saw, yes.
All right, Craig in Johannesburg, thank you for that. Let's see if we're able to do Stanza. Let's see if we're able to follow up with first help on that. 11:20 on Saturday night, says Craig. I don't know if you see situations like that where actually the driving is so bad and so dangerous that people are literally placed in huge danger. 14 minutes to 7.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 40 Rand from Sandton to Rhodesfield. It's for the bozzers who switch off the geyser when no one's home. And for our clever who get that there's food at home means exactly that. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 40 Rand from Sandton to Rhodesfield Station. Gautrain, for people on the move.
Mzansi, We thank you for what you did yesterday, today, and what you will do tomorrow to meet your tax obligations. By submitting your income tax returns on time and keeping your personal and banking information up to date, you have made your tax matters daily matters. Our gratitude as SARS is immeasurable. We thank you for contributing to our country's prosperity. Visit sars.gov.za to keep your details updated. Your tax matters. SARS at your service.
Hello, Takoos. Hope you're well. Listen, I see Michelle's drove now you're in with such a fancy car. And then I asked her, is this your new car? She said, no. It's pre-owned and she bought it for a bargain from We Buy Cars. It's a fancy bloody ding hoor. Apparently they didn't trade it in her Oma's car and then they got this one. No, you must go look. Michelle says it's a dream car and she bought it for a bargain. She herself couldn't believe her eyes when she saw the price.
We Buy Cars, the best place to buy a car by far.
SAfm 104 to 107. Nationwide.
13 minutes to 7. Good morning. The organisation Freedom Under Law confirming now it will challenge the decisions made by the Judicial Service Commission after it failed to recommend enough judges to be appointed to fill all the vacant positions on the Supreme Court of Appeal. So while it did recommend 2 judges for appointment, 2 other judges who've been described by the legal sorority as highly regarded, Judge David Unterholter and Judge Atina Sowendu, were not recommended. The JSC has not said why it did not make these recommendations when the Supreme Court of Appeal does have vacancies that need to be filled at the moment. Lawson Naidu is the Executive Secretary at CASAC. Lawson, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you.
As I understand it, you've actually received a letter from the Judicial Service Commission explaining its decision to not make these appointments to fill all of the vacancies. Does that letter actually explain what happened?
They explain some of what happened, Stephen. So, as we know, there were 4 vacancies on the Supreme Court of Appeal, which the JSC had advertised for those 4 vacancies. They interviewed 10 candidates and ultimately only made 2 appointments or 2 recommendations to the president for appointment. And CASAC had written to the JSC asking a series of detailed questions, trying to understand the reasoning behind that decision. What were the reasons that only 2 judges were appointed or recommended? What were the reasons why none of the others were deemed suitable to fill the other 2 positions? And the response that we got answers some of the questions, but they raise many others as well. And what's clear from the response is that the voting procedure is that was done in such a way that there's a requirement that there are 23 commissioners on the JSC. So a candidate would require 12 votes in order to get a majority. And there were 2 rounds of voting in this case. In the first round, 1 judge got 19 votes and 4 other judges got 12 votes each. So there was a deadlock for the 3 remaining places. What the JSC then did was to simply rerun that voting process with all the candidates. Whereas I think in most electoral systems, the candidate at the top of the list would be deemed to have been recommended, and then there would have been a sort of runoff between the other 4. And that didn't happen in this case. So we ended up with the situation where in the second ballot, only 2 candidates got 12 or more votes.
It seems, okay, so something seems to have happened between the first and second round, but is there a legal duty on commissioners, so members of the Judicial Service Commission, some of them are politicians, most of them are not, do they have to explain why they made a particular decision?
Well, that's quite remarkable because they don't. And also the vote is done in secret. So we don't know which of the commissioners voted in which way. And I think that's something that does need to be looked at for the future. I'm not sure that a voting process itself is necessarily the right way to resolve these issues or for the JSC to operate. We know that they have recently last year adopted criteria and guidelines for the interview process of candidates. But the question that now remains is whether they utilize those criteria in their closed door deliberations in order to reach a decision on which candidates are going to be recommended. It appears from the response that we got from the JSC last week that those criteria are not considered as part of the deliberative process, and it's really just commissioners voting on, in some way say on a whim.
So if I were a commissioner on the JSE, I could literally decide I'm not going to vote for this person because they support Kaizer Chiefs, full stop. And no one would ever know that's why I voted.
Indeed.
Lawson Naidu, thank you. Executive Secretary of the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, 8 minutes to 7.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy backlogs out of Pretoria en route to Joburg this morning. At this big collision scene on the N14, the Ben Schoeman Highway just before Jean Avenue. Traffic is almost back to Eupheus Road. So you've got the option of the old Joburg Road. You've got the option of Boerta Avenue. Both of those will get you down towards the N1 highway. If the connections onto the M1 a lot quicker than the N14 will. And the roadworks on the M1 south at the R21 already pushing Monday traffic back through Linwood Road and marching back towards the N4 Emelafani Highway. That is a fully loaded situation early Monday morning. Also, Joburg side, a collision on the N3 just after Leondale Road at Spraidview, so some backlogging traffic there. Crossing to Durban, if you're heading to the airport, make sure you've got plenty of time to get through. There are two major queues this morning. The first between the M7 Bluff exit and the M13 bridge, the roadworks up through Spaghetti Junction. That's a sort of normal queue. And as soon as you get past that works, you're right back into more traffic, which is queuing all the way through towards a crash just before Queen Nandi Drive. So that is heavy. Also on the southbound side, that crash highly visible to motorists coming south. So just after Kwamashu down through Queen Nandi towards Inanda, that'll get a bit heavy as well. M7 from Hunt Stedman up towards the N3 highway on your way to Pinetown looking slow. And Cape Town, a couple of crashes holding up traffic on the highways. One inbound on the N1 before the R300. Traffic is pushing back through to Okavango Road, so Kryfontein through Brackenfell heavy. And the N2 inbound, a collision on the side of the highway before Jan Smuts Drive, exit to Athlone. That traffic queues from the airport runway area. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag SAfm Sunrise.
Well, good to hear from you this morning. Various things going on, as you know. We'll talk about coalitions in just a moment. Also, hear from the Mayor of Cape Town, Jordan Hill-Lewis, about these protests that we saw over the weekend for and against Israel and Palestine, or the situation in Gaza, depending on how you would prefer to refer to it. We'll talk about that. Your mediated conversation, quite a difficult one, I must just tell you. It's about what are called baby savers. And these are little sort of boxes where someone can put a baby safely if they can no longer care for the baby, if they need to abandon the baby. And as I understand, the Gauteng Social Development Department has now said that these are illegal. We'll try and find out why. I mean, very difficult conversation in a way to have, and yet quite an important conversation, I think. You know, what you want to do, of course, is find the best possible solution for a baby that's in that difficult position and for the parents of such a baby. And almost always you find that this is a sort of young woman who's in these kinds of positions and is kind of stuck, really, and not able to sort of do what they want to do and care for the baby. So take your calls on that as well and look at that issue. So that coming up too. Voice notes coming through this morning on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Stephen. Throughout this year, in fact, I think since last year, we heard about the messy situation at Forte. I think it's an administration and governance thing where politicians are even getting degrees that they didn't even study for. Why are they now suddenly the portfolio committee on education involved with what is happening at UCT? Is it opportunism that they now say it's a transformation matter? I mean, I don't get it. Debu here. Thanks, bye.
Table, yeah, interesting question. And I know that there was a discussion in Parliament in the Higher Education Portfolio Committee last week about the situation in at the University of Cape Town. That's the investigation report into what happened with the departure of the Vice Chancellor Mamokgethi Phakeng, Professor Phakeng. And so I know that was discussed in Parliament yesterday, so there are issues coming out of that. You know the number, of course, 086 000 2032. Len on the line from Hillcrest, that's in Durban. Len, hi.
Hey, Stephen, how are you?
I'm well, go for it.
Good. You know, you talk about this dropping in these almost collisions and what have you. I think it's a common thing for people to jump red robots and what have you. My suggestion was we have a fight the driver campaign, that everybody or anybody who partakes should travel at the speed limit, stop at red robots and stop streets, and just see what happens in a quiet protest.
In other words, everybody just drives properly. They just follow the law and they do it carefully.
Well, that's what I mean, yes. Just drive as you're supposed to drive. Because I know down here at Fields Hill, it's an 18 limit. They used to do trapping. They don't trap anymore. They don't trap anywhere in our area. And people going down there 100 plus at least.
Yeah. No, I know. I find that the drive from Pietermaritzburg to Durban one of the most stressful things. Right, Len, lots of noise coming through on that line. Thank you. I think that's a very interesting idea. If you're in the traffic right now, you may agree with them. Zwela Banzi, also in KwaZulu-Natal. The situation in Gaza. Zwela Banzi, hi.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well. Go for it.
Fine, thank you. I'll be quick and short. Listen, Stephen, here we are because of USA and United Nations.
Yeah.
About Israel-Palestinian war. And it really disturbed me when the respected members of parliament, they talk nonsense without even realizing they are talking nonsense. For a short time, let me say, Palestine was under British colonization after the Second World War of 1939 to 1945. Then President Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
But Zwela Banzi, just speak a little more clearly. It's not a very. It's difficult to sort of hear what you're saying. So, okay, I was with you until you said that the Palestinians were colonized. Then.
Yes, you are hearing me now.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, thank you. So I was saying Palestine was under British colonization. So everything, in other words, we are here. We are because of USA together with United Nations. Because Palestine was under British colonization after the Second World War of 1939 to 1945. Yeah. Then Franklin Delano Roosevelt made a promise to Israel and Palestine that they were going to have some talks on how they were going to divide the land, whereby Arabs would be on the other side and Israel would be on the other side. Now, when Truman took over, he didn't implement the resolution taken by Franklin Roosevelt. And then this other guy from what do you call the United Nations, then he after that he just announced that the Israel was going to have the land now because that land was of Palestine anyway.
All right, yeah, Zwela Banzi. I mean, I'm aware of those meetings. I'm not an expert on it, but I hear the point that you're making, and something did happen there. And I think Truman was also the first person to recognize Israel's independence as the U.S. president. William, in Cape Town, you were at the Cape Town March, both of them, or the one yesterday?
Hello. Yeah, about yesterday, Stephen. Listen, we don't all in Cape Town represent the Palestinians. So the Muslims, they have a peaceful march, and I know why is violence coming in now. And number one, people are deceived. The Israel was actually, they are not the occupiers. The occupiers is the Palestinians. There's never been a Palestinian state or nation. That was people, but Arabs that lived around Israel that came in that time, but it was on a British colony. It's Israel's land, and God has even make a promise with them for that land. And God has, and if you read in Joel 2, you will see that God said they want a two-state, and God said they're dividing my land. God has given that for the Israelis as a possession, and Jesus is defending themselves. You know what they were shouting today in the streets in Cape Town? They said, dead to Israel, dead to Israel. How can you be a religion and you propagate violence? Dead to Israel. Why? How can you shout something like that? You see Israel going in and they're defending themselves because there's tunnels under that.
But I mean, but so many people in Gaza are dead, William, and they've been killed by Israel's actions.
Yeah, but still, that's what the terrorists do. That is actually the whole thing from the terrorists. They go under the hospital.
Yeah, William,
they have tunnels and stuff.
Yeah,
asked them to evacuate.
But I mean, nearly 12,000 people dead. I mean,
no, but the thing is this. The thing is this. They are protecting these. They say that they don't say these people are terrorists. They say these people are freedom fighters. These people are murderers.
Right.
They murdered 40 babies' heads.
No, William. Okay, William. I'm going to stop that there. I mean, the beheading story has been found to be untrue. I know Biden said it, and the White House apologized because he did get that wrong. As you know, of course, very different, strong views on all of this. You with SAfm leading the conversation at 7:00. Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance if they can't. Ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 38462. Now that's good news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAfm News.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, Malema hypes his party members ahead of elections, and Motsoaledi moves to overhaul the immigration system. This is SAfm News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. EFF leader Julius Malema has called on structures of the EFF to be on standby all the time to address the needs of communities. Addressing the Northwest Ground Forces Forum at Mahikeng Civic Center, Malema cautioned his party structures against listening to disgruntled residents during election period only. Malema's address was part of the EFF's Maihlome phase ahead of next year's national and provincial elections.
The masipala tamo Northwest, the collapse kaufela. There is no better municipality. Others are worse because they can't even generate their own income. A ground force must always be guided by revolutionary morality. Don't have your people because you're going to elections, and that after elections you don't care about your people.
Close friends of the man who was brutally stabbed and killed say no amount of jail time will help heal their wounds. This as the accused in the Sibanye-Stillwater murder case is expected to appear in the Western Area Magistrates Court today. The accused is alleged to have stabbed the victim multiple times outside the Liseding hostel in Carltonville in the west of Johannesburg. The accused then took a selfie next to the corpse, which found its way to social media. These friends say they are deeply saddened.
He was killed in such a brutal way. I'm in so much pain. He killed him like he was killing a cow. I'm very hurt. He didn't deserve to be killed in the manner he was. Yes, he has been arrested, but nothing will ever be the same again. Nothing will ever be normal.
A 34-year-old man who allegedly severely assaulted his 5-year-old daughter is expected to appear in the Senegal Magistrates Court for bail application. The man allegedly beat up the child and poured glue on her face. The girl was staying with her father following the death of her mother in 2020. It is reported that she initially stayed with a foster parent before the father took her earlier this year. Last week, angry residents marched at his first court appearance to demand that he be denied bail. Home Affairs Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi says the establishment of an immigration division to deal with the granting of visas is as fundamental as the current system. Cabinet has published the white paper on citizenship, immigration and refugee legislation, which intends to overhaul the weak, unworkable and exploited system in the country. Home Affairs has no records as to how many undocumented immigrants are in South Africa. However, Immigration Services deports between 15 and 20,000 undocumented foreigners every year, and the number is on the increase. Motsoaledi, who briefed the media in Pretoria, says the current system, which comprises 17 types of visas, is unworkable.
And I'm not sure whether I know of any country anywhere in the world that has got so many different types of visas, which are obviously an administrative nightmare for officials in the department. Now, what is our policy framework proposal on immigration? The white paper proposes that border control must be coupled with immigration, meaning the whole Immigration Act and the BMA Act will have to be integrated.
The National Press Club says it's concerned about the 128 retrenched employees of the independent newspapers who have not received their severance packages, but instead were given 2,000 rand food vouchers. The retrenchments were part of the company's strategy to cut the wage bill. The club's chairperson, Frans Mashade, says the independent newspapers should respect the rights of retrenched staff members and make sure that their dignity is not compromised.
We call on employers to work closely with the National Press Club as they post future vacancies to enable the re-entry of the retrenched colleagues in the system. The NPC will also like to encourage affected individuals to continue working closely with all industry formations for any future employment possibilities and to enlist the support of institutions like Lifeline and other similar organizations to support them in this hour of need and uncertainty.
And finally, the World Health Organization says the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City, where thousands of people are reportedly trapped, has ceased to function. It says constant fighting and bombing in the area had all but knocked out the hospital's power, significantly increasing fatalities. The US and the EU have expressed deep concern. The BBC's Paul Adams reports.
The worsening situation is causing alarm among Israel's allies. In Washington, Joe Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, said America did not want to see firefights in front of hospitals with innocent people caught in the crossfire. The US administration, he said, was having active consultations with the Israeli military, and the European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, urged Israel to show maximum restraint. The EU, he said, was gravely concerned about the deepening humanitarian crisis.
Recapping your top story, EFF leader Julius Malema has called on structures of the EFF to be on standby all the time to address the needs of the communities. For SAfm News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 7:30.
Luyanda, thank you. Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 38462 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out. Don't wait for Black Friday to get access to great deals. SMS out to 38462 and ask Outsurance to give you a better deal on your car insurance. Ask them for 500 Rand cash if they can't beat what you're currently paying, or a massive 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. That's out to 38462. That's a monthly saving on your premium or the cash promise. You've got nothing to lose. SMS now. Outsurance as a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply.
A very good morning to you. In your SAfm sports headlines, soccer action. Mamelodi Sundowns are 73 million Rand richer after winning the inaugural African Football League. And more soccer as Chelsea and Manchester City serve up an 8-goal thriller at Stamford Bridge. Let's find out more just before 7:30.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, if you're just joining us, big delays coming out of Pretoria this Monday morning. You've got a crash scene, a big one on the N14, the Van Schoeman Highway, just before Jean Avenue. That traffic is parking all the way back through to Euphius Road. Look at the old Joburg Road, or especially Boerta Avenue as the alternative routes down towards the N1. Probably Boerta Avenue from the sort of Fountain Circle area is a much better option. At the same time, you've got a massive backlog on the N1 that extends from the N4 Emelafeni Highway all the way down to the works at the R21 interchange. A crash at Spruitview, so the N3 passing Leondale Road, coming up to Heidelberg Road's heavy. Durban, 2 queues effectively, but it's all joined up. So there's the roadworks at the M13 bridge, and then a crash before Queen Nundy Drive. That traffic extending from the M7 up to Queen Nundy with no gaps at all. The N2 South is very heavy coming down into that area from Kwamashu. Cape Town, Marine Drive, badly backed up now from the West Coast Road right through to Racecourse Road, and a crash on the N1 coming into Cape Town before the R300. That is pushing traffic heavily back to Justenburg. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
SAfm Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
9 after 7 Monday morning with SAfm Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us this morning. So much to come. We'll talk to the Mayor of Cape Town, Jordan Hill-Lewis, about what happened yesterday with those protests around Gaza and Israel and the Palestinians. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Panyaza Lesufi, the Gauteng Premier, and his comments about these crime wardens. I don't know where you stand on them, but he seems to be really very angry, very frustrated with the police, Mr. Bheki Cele. I mean, maybe it's the Justice Minister he's talking about, Ronald Lamola, but it seems to me it's the police minister when he says your days are numbered if you don't formally recognize these crime prevention wardens. He wants them to have guns. I'll read out the full quote for you again in a couple of moments. All of that to come. Good morning.
Have you seen our upgraded currency with enhanced security features? Identifying a genuine banknote is easy. Just look, feel, and tilt. Hold the banknote against the light and look for the Big 5 watermark unique to each denomination. Feel the race print on Madiba's portrait and tilt to see the security thread change color. For more, download the SA Reserve Bank Currency app and spend your money with confidence. Our money, our pride. SA Reserve Bank, connecting us.
November. It even starts with the word no. No parking, no patience, no prices for locals, nowhere without a tourist. And nobody knows how to drive. It's November. So, we're charging no fees for 6 months when you sign up for a 10x retirement product in November. No fees, no drama, just results. Speak to a retirement expert today. 10x your future. 10x is a licensed FSP. T's and C's apply.
Agenda-setting conversations of the day.
Good morning. Well, drama in Cape Town over the weekend with protests around the situation in Gaza and Israel's bombing of the enclave in response to the Hamas attack 6 weeks ago. First on Saturday, a huge protest, thousands of people supporting Palestine and Palestinians. That protest, also the NC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula speaking at that protest. Then yesterday, as I understand the reports, a group of people supporting Israel tried to hold what's been described in some reports as a sort of demonstration of support for Israel, or in other reports as a sort of prayer meeting. That appears to have been disrupted. Police arresting 4 people who say they support Palestine, who, as I understand it, had tried to stop the pro-Israeli meeting. You heard from Andrew earlier. He phoned us. He said that he had been verbally abused. He wasn't upset about it, but he said that he had been treated wrongly, people grabbing at his T-shirt, etc., when he was just sort of walking past. That was his version. Well, the mayor of the city of Cape Town is Jordan Hill-Lewis, and he's from the Democratic Alliance. Mr. Mayor, good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephen. Good morning, listeners.
How would you describe what happened in Cape Town on Saturday and Sunday?
I think you've described it quite perfectly. There was a massive demonstration on Saturday that was entirely peaceful, and I really commend the organizers and the participants more so, and also those who opposed that march for conducting themselves entirely peacefully on Saturday. That's exactly the example of tolerance and free expression in an open democracy that we want to set. Unfortunately, a very small group of residents, and really no more than probably 100 on Sunday, set a very different tone. And that's why it was important for me to speak out and to condemn that disruption.
Do you know if what happened yesterday, so let me be very clear, there's the pro-Israel event yesterday, the disruption to that, was it spontaneous or do you think it was organized?
Well, there was a approved prayer gathering, as you say, that they had applied for permission to do that, just as the demonstrators, the protesters on Saturday had applied for permission to gather. Obviously, these things go around on social media, and so a small group of counter-protesters showed up. They did not have permission to gather under the RGA. And the police tell me that a few of them started grabbing flags and ripping them up and grabbing T-shirts and were verbally abusive, and then obviously it very quickly descended into a moment of chaos. But fortunately, I think the police acted correctly and restored order quickly and arrested some of those responsible.
We all know there's strong feelings on this, and we can understand why as well. Are you worried there could be more protests or disruptions that tensions over this, in some ways in our society, we're going to see more situations where cities like yours are going to see protests and the difficulties that they can bring?
I am concerned about that. That's partly why I thought it was important to say something publicly yesterday to condemn the disruption. You know, Stephen, we have had protests, I won't say daily, but nearly daily since the start of this war in the city, and we've kept careful track of them. Every single one of them has been peaceful. They have been, I meant what I said when I said in my statement that I've been really proud of Cape Town for the way that we have conducted this over the last few weeks. It has been totally peaceful and tolerant. We had one example a few weeks ago where about between 5 and 10 vehicles who were, supporting the Palestinian cause blocked one of the highways, blocked the M5. It lasted about 15 minutes. They were removed, and that was it. That's the only other example that we've had where people have conducted themselves in a unbefitting manner. So I'm concerned that this deteriorates further, and I just call on religious leaders, on civic leaders, on other political parties to make the point that it is absolutely acceptable to vehemently disagree with the opposing view, obviously, but that in South Africa, in our constitutional democracy, in our plural democracy, you have to do so peacefully and with respect for the law.
You, as the mayor of Cape Town, have previously supported Ukraine after it was invaded by Russia. In fact, I saw the image again this morning. The Cape Town City Hall was lit up in the colours of the Ukrainian flag. Are you going to do the same for the people of Gaza?
No, I have said publicly that I'm deeply concerned about the impact on civilians of what is happening in Gaza and the terrible images that we are seeing of the impact, particularly on children. But I've had enormous pressure from both sides of this dispute to light up the city hall in the flag of in the colors of the Israeli flag, in the colors of the Gazan, the Palestinian flag. And I have said that all that would achieve would be to deeply, deeply divide a city against itself and make zero difference to the conflict in the Middle East whatsoever. The only thing it would achieve would make a significant negative difference here. So I really believe that the most responsible way to conduct myself in this context is to call Capetonians to respect each other's views, to protest peacefully, to champion your cause if you want to. That's entirely up to you, but to do so in a way that demonstrates the tolerance and diversity of views that Cape Town should be known for.
Okay, so you say you won't do this because it won't achieve anything in the conflict. What did lighting up the Cape Town City Hall in the colours of the Ukrainian flag achieve then?
Well, of course, it didn't achieve anything in the conflict, but it does make absolutely clear in a much less nuanced conflict, that there can be absolutely no excuse for that invasion and occupation.
And can there be an excuse for what Israel is doing in Gaza?
Well, in the first few days after that horrific terror incident, when the world was lighting up all their public buildings in Israel, you could have asked me the same question with the opposite flag. Now, then I was under massive pressure from the South Africans from across the spectrum to put the Israeli flag on there. And I said it's not going to do anything positive. All that it's going to do is divide Capetonians against each other. That's not my job. I'm not interested in doing that.
Jordan Hill-Lewis, the Mayor of Cape Town, thank you. In a moment, Mbazima Shaloa has agreed to share his view on Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi's comments about crime wardens and the police minister. 18 after 7.
Tune in for a conversation on diabetes on Afternoon Express. We're joined by physician and endocrinologist Dr. Jocelyn Hellig to unpack the common symptoms and risk factors of this disease. Plus, we look at how to manage diabetes through lifestyle choices with dietitian Kath McGaw. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
Open the Absa Cash Invest Tracker account and earn the best rates in the market. More than the top 10 money market funds' average returns. Enjoy unmatched advantages at an interest rate of 8.9% per annum. Plus, if you open your account today, you could win your share of 15 million rand in luxury travel experiences for two. Yes, you heard right. A trip for you and your partner. My bank does that. Open yours today in less than 5 minutes on the banking app at your nearest Absa branch or consult your private banker or call 0860 111 515. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Have you ever noticed how unique the rugby ball is?
You should check out Head High.
The rise of junior rugby stars Mana and Tai.
Vince is not just their stepfather, he's their coach.
Catch the brothers' dream of the black jersey, Head High, every Sunday at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com.
# Rugby Drama Galore. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAfm Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
20 after 7, good morning. Well, a series of comments that came from the Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi yesterday. This was captured first on TikTok and then reported in Daily Maverick. And he was talking to a South African National Civics Organization event. Sanko, he said this: "We have trained these young people to be police wardens. You as a police minister are refusing to recognize them. Your days are numbered. We can't when young people are assisting us to fight crime. You want to undermine them. You can't when we have trained young people to be on the streets in our townships and protect our young people when they are studying at night in our schools. You don't want to recognize them. We say to this minister, give us the power for these young people to have the power to get guns so that they can protect our townships and chase away criminals in our own areas. That's a direct quote from Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi speaking yesterday. Let's get a view now from Mbazima Shaloa, a columnist at News 24, also a former Premier of Gauteng. Mr. Shaloa, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and to your listeners.
How do you assess what's going on here? These would appear to me, at least, to be very strong comments by Gauteng Premier Lesufi.
Yes, no, indeed. It does appear to be very strong comments. But, the thing is, one doesn't know what was said before that clip, to be able to have a proper context. But that notwithstanding, my approach is this, that I've always been for the devolution of policing powers to provinces, not just to Gauteng. However, I do not support a view that says outside of that process, poorly trained police wardens who were really trained to be doing patrols should be armed, be they the ones in the Western Cape, be the ones that are in Joburg. Police properly trained get disarmed by criminals. What more? Wardens who, as we know, their training was really, if anything, between 3 to 6 months. So I'm raising two things. One, I've got no issue with the need for devolution of powers. I have a difficulty in accepting that people who have not been fully trained, as police, should be armed. But I also think it is not something that could only be done by the police minister. If you want to move that route, then as provinces, they need to say, we need a change in the constitution to provide for the following. But you will still need all the competencies for training that are there now for anyone, whether they are provincial or national police.
I appreciate what you say about the context of all of this, although the quote in a way may also speak for itself, but obviously the context is important. For Panyaza Lesufi, the Premier, to say to a minister, your days are numbered. And I mean, this is Bheki Cele. In Mbazima, that's brave, isn't it?
Yes.
To take on Bheki Cele like that?
Well, no, I'm not sure whether it's brave or not. It's also that we're going into elections, so he may not even have been addressing Bheki Cele, but he had been addressing the ANC constituencies. He may have been addressing communities ravaged by crime to say, I am trying to do my best here, but this minister is not doing very well. I've got no doubt that in a day or two, a meeting will be held and all this will be put down to a misunderstanding.
Whether it was or not, of course, is a different thing. There are other things too.
Absolutely.
I mean, we know that crime is becoming a burning issue, and it's literally exploded since the end of the pandemic, and it's very, very scary. And yet we've had, over the years, we know that government, for various reasons, has battled to deal with this. It's about policing, it's about police leadership, it's about organization, it's about the fact that only around 15% of murders have ever actually lead to convictions, which means for a murderer, it's probably, you almost know that you're going to get away with it. How big an issue is this going to be going into next year's elections?
I think it has always been a big issue for communities. Now it may even be bigger depending on each community and how they impact it. I think the real issue in terms of policing is that it does not appear as if the government, and this is not just Bheki Cele, but he is worse in that in him, he's supposed to be focusing on policy for policing, but he's got no idea. He thinks he's still the police commissioner, and that just by invectives at criminals, you're going to change that. We need more than what Becky Kele says. We need more in terms of properly trained police who can investigate. We need to beef up, bring more people into that area. But above all, you need the NPA that is capable of ensuring that if people are arrested, they get prosecuted, and then they get sentenced, and then they serve the time.
Mbazima Shalom, thank you very much indeed, sir. Do appreciate the time. Columnist at News 24, former Premier of Gauteng as well. You heard him very clearly there, just discussing that particular issue, those comments made by Panyaza Lesufi. Obviously, we're sort of chasing reaction. I don't know if we'll get more reaction from the ANC or other people as yet. I know many people have decided not to speak about this, but let's just see what pans out. The issue of the crime wardens in Gauteng, of course, is becoming a much bigger issue. We will talk a little bit about the Trevor Noah advert in a little while. It features a pair of rhino, but we'll be talking about that in the next half an hour. You're with SAfm leading. It's just gone 26 minutes after 7.
This is SAfm Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Sundowns, crowns Kings of Africa.
Yeah, they're laughing all the way to the bank. They are the African Football League champions following a 2-0 win over Wydad Casablanca. Took place at Loftus Versfeld Stadium yesterday afternoon. Sundowns walking away with that 76 million rand prize money, and that's approximately 5 times the amount the DStv Premiership winners earn, which is around 15 million rand. In the meantime, Richards Bay bagged 3 crucial points in their 1-0 win over Cape Town Spurs, and that was in the DStv Premiership yesterday, with Tolo Musa missing a penalty in the 94th minute for the Urban Warriors. While AmaZulu FC, they're showing character. They came from behind to win 3-1 over Golden Arrows in their Premiership match at the Mpumalanga Stadium. It took place in Hammersdale. Elsewhere, Pep Guardiola's team, Manchester City, played to a 4-4 draw with Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. The thrilling draw kept City at the top of the table, just 1 point ahead of Liverpool and Arsenal after their wins over the weekend, and 2 ahead of Spurs after they were beaten by Wolves on Saturday. Here's Man City boss Pep Guardiola.
Though this is getting better, every manager needs his time, so new club, new players, but sooner or later, and I guess sooner than later, will be top, be a contender, because the quality in all departments are there.
More soccer action saw Mohamed Salah score twice as Liverpool maintained their 100% record at Anfield. 3-0 was their victory against Brentford. And Thomas Soucek grabbed a late winner as West Ham came from behind to secure a 3-2 Premier League win against Nottingham Forest there. On to tennis action, Novak Djokovic started his ATP Finals crown defense in Turin with a 7-6, 6-7, 6-3 win over Holger Rune, and that's to secure the year-ending number 1 ranking for a record-extending 8th time. Here's the world number 1, Novak Djokovic.
I could feel it, I was very eager to win tonight's match, get that, so to say, monkey off my back. I won Paris, which put me in a much better position rankings-wise, and I knew that coming into Torino, all I have to do is win 1 match. So, obviously a big objective, big goal is achieved. Everything else now is a bonus.
Let's go to more tennis action. The Mets-born and bred Ugo Humbert, crowned champion of the Marseille Open over the weekend, defeating Alexander Shevchenko 6-3, 6-3 in 1 hour and 7 minutes, which his rankings mean he goes up the order.
Yeah, it's just incredible to finish like this. Number 1 in France, maybe top 20, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah, so I can't describe it. Just amazing.
Congratulations, and good luck for next year.
Merci.
And that's your sport on Sunrise. We'll bring you more headlines. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thank you. How much did the Trevor Noah advert cost? We'll look at that in the next half an hour. You're with SAfm leading the conversation. Stage 2 now, stage 3 later, 6:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, the public has until January the 19th next year to make their inputs on the proposed policy on citizenship. Home Affairs Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi released the white paper on proposed policy for public comment yesterday. Close friends of the man who was brutally stabbed and killed say no amount of jail time will help heal their wounds. This as the accused in the Sibanye-Stillwater murder case is expected to appear in the Western Area Magistrates Court today. And EFF leader Julius Malema has called on structures of the EFF to be on standby all the time to address the needs of the communities. Addressing the Northwest Crown Forces Forum at Mahikeng Civic Centre, Malema cautioned his party structures against listening to disgruntled residents during election period only. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a very heavy Monday on the run out of Pretoria down towards Joburg as motorists sit on the N1 from Stormful Road right the way down towards the works of the R21. And there's still a lot of traffic to come into that section as well. There's really big backlogs on Sefaka Makato coming out of Montana towards the N1. So all of that traffic will come onto the N1, go from Sefaka Makato to Stormful and then just sit. And that'll probably push traffic back through towards that Montana exit. It really is super heavy this Monday. Crash on the Mopani Highway to Pretoria just down by Bremer Street. So some extra delays there. Irene's dead still. There's a lot of queuing. Both the Dam Road coming through towards the R21 and then Maynendale Mapius jammed all approaches there. A couple of crash scenes coming into Joburg. Got one on the N3 north at Spruitview. That's after Leondale. Another on the M2 at Denver. So a queue from the N3 held in a city change. Durban under real pressure this morning on that N2 running north. It's effectively because of roadworks and a crash. A queue that is joined up from the M7 Bluff exit all the way through to Queen Nundy Drive. If you're on your way to the airport, make sure you've got plenty of extra time to get through there. The M4 is heavy from Clarewood up to Congella. Looks like something's happened around the sort of Steel Bridge area. Also worth a mention, Umgeni Road this morning, Reservoir Hills through Springfield Park, down towards Alpine Road. We're checking some very heavy, unusual backlogs there. Cape Town, 2 crashes on the highways, both very busy. One on the N2 inbound before Borchard's Quarry. If you're coming in from Khayelitsha, that's a queue now that's right back to sort of Spine Road territory. And a collision on the N1 driving into Cape Town before the R300. It's closer to Brackenfell Boulevard Bridge, and that's a queue right back deep into Justenburg territory. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
The business update on SAfm.
Ray Maclaki, good morning. Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
Well, it is U.S. markets that is leading with losses. The investor focus this week will largely be on consumer inflation data in the U.S. During October, the U.S. Central Bank has warned that interest rates may have to increase further because consumer inflation remains high, and this is worrying investors. In U.S. markets, Nasdaq, Dow Jones, and S&P futures are each down 0.4%. In Asian markets, Hong Kong's Hang Seng and China's Shanghai Composite are each down 0.2%, and Japan's Nikkei is up 0.1%, and the dollar to the rand is 18.76.
And then our economy may have dodged a contraction during the third quarter, even though some key sectors shrank.
Yeah, and this is because there have been fewer Eskom blackouts during the third quarter or from July to September this year, and this might help the economy to grow a bit. Economists from Oxford Economics Africa expect the economy to grow by a marginal 0.1% during the third quarter. The economy is expected to have avoided a contraction despite major sectors of the economy, including mining and manufacturing, declining during the third quarter. And on the 5th of December, Statistics South Africa will release official figures on the economy's performance during the third quarter.
And the fashion group, they sell clothes, they've received a record number of credit applications.
Yeah, TFG is a retail company that owns Foschini, Markham, Jet, and many other retail brands. TFG says more consumers are relying on credit to buy clothing and other goods because of tough economic times. Applications for TFG credit or store accounts have increased to more than 2 million since the start of the COVID pandemic. Of these applications, only 17% were approved. TFG has rejected most of the applications for credit because some consumers have a bad credit score.
Ray McClark, thank you very much indeed. Ray, of course, back with us in an hour. Back with us tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SAfm.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, lots to talk about this morning. Matthew in Cape Town. Hi. The protests yesterday and on Saturday.
Yes, Stephen, morning to you and your listeners. Look, my view of this, and I'm responding also to the caller that phoned you. I think he quoted something out of Job.
Yes, he did, yeah.
Or something, yes. Now, why are we using a Bible? And I don't want to describe the Bible with many adjectives here. But why are we using a text out of someone that's written something thousands of years ago for a title deed? Why? What justifies who wrote that piece of so-called legislation that we are using Bible as a title deed? For what? Look, we're all human beings here. Religion seems to me is the biggest problem here. You understand? If you think using a text out of the Bible as part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. And another thing is this. Whether you are pro-Palestinian or pro-Israeli, we got enough problems in this country. This is not an Arab state, nor is it a Jewish state. This is South Africa. Okay? So stay in line if you are Arab and Palestinian, and stay in line if you're an Israeli. And this is just one thing that we should think about, just one final thing. And you might not believe in it, it doesn't really matter, because I'm not pro either one.
Sure.
Both of these people, both of the Arabs and the Jews, denied Christ. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. Well, denial might be a strong word in terms of the context, but I think I understand your point. Matthew on the line from Cape Town. Thank you. 086 000 2032. As you know, strong views on this. Joy in Johannesburg. Hi. The closure of baby savers. I mentioned it earlier. We'll talk more about it in our mediated conversation. What do you think, Joy?
Well, good morning, Stephen. Great to be on radio.
Welcome.
My first time. My concern is, why is the Gauteng Department of Social Development want to close these homes down? Do they have an alternative thing to do, or what are they going to do with all these babies that have been, when there is a safe haven for them? And I think these homes do link up with the social development. They should use them as a link and not just make them illegal and close them down.
I must say, for me, I think, as I understand law around children, it is always about the best interests of the child. So we then need to just follow from there. If the best interests of the child, of babies, are to keep these baby savers open, well, then that would be the decision. If it's not, then it wouldn't be, if you see what I mean.
Yes, but have they given a reason as to why they're doing an immediate closure?
As I understand it, they say in their reasons in the sort of provincial gazette, or the provincial directive, I think, that was put out, they say that parents have a responsibility to look after their child, and that if a child is left in a baby saver, it's denied a right to a name, family, and cultural identity. That's the reasons that I've seen.
Oh, that's just one of the reasons, but that's not addressing the problem of these babies. You know, they should have, then maybe social development should be increasing their programs on birth control, of doing more exposure to the young mothers that are creating all these problems.
Yeah, Joy, look, there'll be a lot more from 8:30. Thank you. Joy on the line from Johannesburg. As I say, you'll mediate a conversation this morning on this issue. Lynn and Kimberley, hi, the situation in Gaza, Lynn.
Hi, Stephen. The situation in Gaza and one or two other things. I just wanted to ask you very briefly, why somebody see somebody killing or injuring? Why does one have to say allegedly when there is so much evidence? That's my first question, Stephen. My second question is, I don't know if I read correctly yesterday in the report that white farmers are no longer allowed to export goods.
Yeah.
And that's my second thing, Stephen. And my last point is, Stephen, I certainly hope you aren't using Al Jazeera as your unbiased information source.
Well, you'll see, Lynn, that I quote from a variety of sources, and I do that deliberately.
I know that, and I still think that your bias is very nuanced towards Palestine.
Okay.
And that you do not see what Israel is doing as self-defense. And I'm not quite sure what proportional defense looks like. If you've killed 2 babies, we'll kill 2 babies.
Yeah.
If you've raped 3 women, we'll rape 3 women. I don't know, is that proportional?
Well, Lynn, as I said at the very beginning of this, and I was very clear about it, I'm not going to make findings on facts or things in the Middle East. I don't know enough about it. You're welcome to your view, and I appreciate the fact that you have a view on me. Anyone's welcome to their view on me about whether they think I'm biased or not. I try and understand as much as I can. I try to do that, and I do not expect to succeed as well as I would like.
That's fair enough, Stephen, and I think that some of your other callers need to take the same attitude, because a lot of people phone in and they've got no idea what they're talking about.
Okay, well, Lynn, I mean, people, I'm afraid, may say the same of, people, they may even say the same of you, I'm afraid to say, but that's the sort of...
I have no doubt.
Yes.
I have no
All right.
doubt.
Lynn on the line from Kimberley, thank you. As I say, we try and sort of bring as much understanding as we can. I read a quote the other day, actually, that said very clearly, are you trying to seek understanding, or are you looking for someone to blame? And I've been thinking a lot about that quote over the last little while. And I think the role of SAfm Sunrise should be to try and seek understanding. Blame is important. I'm not going to move away from blame. There are things where you need to blame. But I think understanding is very important too. And just a sort of note around the use of the word allegedly, if I say that someone is, done this allegedly, it means that there hasn't been a court finding against them. That's usually what it means. And that's where it comes from. Because otherwise, if I say someone is a thief because they stole something, well, they could sue me. That's basically what it boils down to. 18 minutes to 8.
First in the morning, SAfm Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Right, well, of course, we've already heard conversations this morning about next year's elections. We didn't plan them, but coming through when we were talking about crime earlier. And of course, next year's elections, many people have been talking about them already. We think kind of May could go all the way through until August, or the Electoral Commission, the IEC, trying to get as many young people to vote as possible. There's a big voter registration weekend this coming weekend. The Chief Electoral Officer, he's the CEO of the Electoral Commission, is Simon Mabolo. Si, good morning.
Good morning and greetings to your listeners, Stephen.
Around the world, we find that many young people do not vote. You, I think, have done research. Are there reasons that people in South Africa, young people in South Africa, tell you why they don't vote?
Well, from the research we did, the indications are that people are really getting disaffected from the democratic process. And we see it as our duty, together with other role players, to reverse that mentality, because it really means that we're going to have a democracy whose citizens, in which the citizens don't participate as they should, and the richness of that democratic experience then is undermined.
I mean, if you want to make good decisions, you need a diversity of people making those decisions. That includes young and old people. How do you encourage people to vote? And I know it can be quite difficult.
It can be difficult, but one has to locate the right to vote within the constitutional framework. But it also has to do with the fact that people has to see development. Where they live, development in terms of the state of the economy, development in terms of a progressive foreign policy outlook, and so on. It is those types of things that people reflect on in making the decision whether or not to vote. But ultimately, it is a right that is located in the Constitution, and it expresses our democratic being as a people, for people to take part in an election.
To register to vote, I mean, you can do it online. You can go to the local voting station. I can't really see how it could be any easier unless we removed the demand for people to register. But that would obviously be quite difficult for you.
Yes, we've made it easy. And I think the introduction of the registration online has been a very innovative way of trying to really get at our target market, our primary target, which is young people. And that facility can be accessed 24/7. It's very easy to use, and you use it at your leisure. So we do want to once again make a call to young persons to take advantage, to say to them, register, because when you are registered, you have a chance to make a vote. But when you are not registered, even that opportunity that you otherwise have diminishes.
The ballot papers that we'll be using next year, I think there's one, maybe two court cases, Mr. Mamabolo, that's going to decide what they look like. There's the whole issue of independent candidates. Is it going to be, at this stage, are we looking like a 2-page ballot paper?
We're not there yet, but it's a prospect we cannot discount at this stage, because we will only know at the close of candidate nomination as to who has qualified. But in the event we have more than 96 parties contesting any specific segment of the election, then we may go to a 2-page ballot. In the event it's 48 or more, then it could be a 2-column ballot. Now, historically, we've always had a single ballot since the advent of democracy in the country. So should that materialize, it means greater effort to educate people, greater effort talking to people on avenues such as this one that you're providing to us.
I always think we're sort of an A4 world. You know, you can like that or not, but most business is done in sort of A4. And wherever I've worked, there's never been enough staples. I mean, this is the problem you'd have with a 2-page ballot as well. It actually gets much more complicated.
It does complicate the logistical effort on the one hand, but the handling effort in the voting station is going to be a bigger problem, because if pages separate, we no longer know what goes with what. So great care would have to be taken to ensure that we make handling easier for both the voter as well as the officials of the IC within the voting station.
And Mr. Mamabolo, the president decides when the election is. It's entirely up to him, if I remember correctly, for a national and provincial election. Has to be by, I think the date is August the 3rd or 4th around then, constitutionally. Are you expecting it to be before then? A lot of people are saying May. If you were a betting man, should I put my money there?
Hey, I would rather not risk my penny and leave it to him. Excuse me. Of course, as the commission, we are engaging with him, and we hope that he'll take the country into his confidence sooner rather than later, so that everybody can gear up for the big day.
Can he even announce it before the court cases are done?
I suspect there is a structural constraint at the moment, because in the event, the nature of the order that comes out of the Concord requires parliamentary work to be done. Then, it does influence how things are going to pan out. And we are anxious, really, for that court judgment to be issued.
Simon Mamabolo, thank you very much indeed. The Chief Electoral Officer, the CEO of the Electoral Commission.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
We've been trying to impress on you how heavy the N1 South is this Monday morning. This is the run through Pretoria, N1 South towards the restrictions at the R21. Traffic is now backed up just a little bit beyond Stormful Road, so that is a super heavy queue, and there's still plenty of traffic piling in from the Montana side as well. Collision on the Mopani Highway at Bremer Street, very heavy coming into Pretoria on the R80. Queues down as far as, back as far as Theo Martins. Also some traffic light issues, Old Joburg Road at Central Avenue in Centurion. If you're on your way way down towards the M1 highway. That is heavy. And queuing traffic all over the main and Nelmapius junction in Irene. Crash on the M2, driving into Joburg at Denver. That is queuing right back into the N3 Helden Ace interchange. Now, Durban, it's been a really jam-packed morning running up the M2. It's a combination of the roadworks around the M13 bridge and then a crash before Queen Nandi Drive. So it's a queue that joins up into both of those incidents without a gap. From the M7 all the way through to Queen Nandi Drive, it is heavy. You need plenty of extra time to get through that to make those flight connections. M4 Southern Freeway stays really badly backed from Clarewood Jacobs all the way through to Umbilo and Kongela. That is also a crash scene as well. And Umgeni Road, as we mentioned earlier, very heavy from Reservoir Hills through the M2 through Springfield Park all the way down to Alpine Road. Again, that's a very heavy and unusual queue. And then Cape Town, the earlier crash on the M1 into town at Brackenfell Boulevard is being cleared, but it's left a very slow backlog from Justenburg. There's another crash just after Plattekloof Road, so a secondary queue on the N1 from Belleville, and a couple of collisions causing delays around Khayelitsha. N2 inbound, a smash before you get to Borchard's Quarry. That's back as far as Meway, and on the outbound side, a crash at Meway in front of Khayelitsha with a delay from the R300. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
The award-winning social experiment Wife Swap is coming to South Africa, and we are casting. Do you rule the roost or cater to the every whim of your family? You'll swap lives and walk in their shoes, but then you'll get to make the rules. It'll change your life forever. We're calling SA's moms from Gauteng, KZN and the Western Cape to take part in this groundbreaking series. To enter, go to wifeswap.co.za. Brought to you by SABC Education and S3.
No matter how much you plan, sometimes life happens. And when life happens, there's Cash Converters Cash Advance Loan. Our 30-day cash advance loan allows you to take care of those unexpected surprises. Simply bring in your items such as jewelry, tech and more. We'll keep it safe and you'll walk out with some much-needed cash. Plus, stand a chance to win 20,000 Rand every week. So, visit a Cash Converters store today. T's and C's apply. Cash Converters, we buy, we sell, we loan cash.
We are going to Durban when Bafana face Benin in the FIFA 2026 World Cup qualifiers. On Saturday, 18 November at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. Gates open at 12 p.m. and tickets are available for 50 Rand for adults and 20 Rand for children at Ticket Pro. Come dressed in your national colors to support Bafana to win prizes. If you are not in Durban, catch the game on SABC 1 at 3 p.m. Also available on sabcsport.com.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag SAFM Sunrise.
8 minutes to 8, good morning. You might have seen the advert already with Trevor Noah, advertising South Africa as a tourist destination. It features the comedian answering questions from foreigners about South Africa. You can imagine how he answers them. It also features a pair of very cheerful rhinoceroses. Tafiu Trafengwa is the CEO of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. As I understand it, they were responsible for the production of this advert. Tafiu, good morning.
Good morning to you and to your listeners.
Is it your advert? Were you responsible for it?
That's correct. It is our advert, and I am responsible for it. And of course, working with the team at the Tourism Business Council and Tourism Marketing South Africa, which are the two companies that I am the CEO of. So it is our advert.
Okay. Obviously, it makes sense to use Trevor Noah. He is, as they say, hot right now. Was it difficult to get him? I mean, was he happy to do it?
He was very happy to do it. I mean, these discussions have been ongoing for quite a number of months. And the way initial discussions, probably a year ago, for him to do some work for the country. And he did agree to do the work. And we went, and gotten, some of the greatest minds from the creative side of things, from filming side, and of course, majority of our expense is going to go to buying media. And I think what's important is that, this ad is designed for the international audience that may not be so familiar with South Africa. We want to convince them to come to South Africa, from North America, from Europe. We're already getting people even in China saying that, we should put some subtitles on it so that they can use it in those particular markets. So it is a lot of work that has gone into it, and we'll still have to spend a little bit to make sure that we penetrate those markets. And we're not spending in rands, we're spending in dollars, pounds, euros, and other currencies. Yeah.
I presume you had to pay Trevor Noah to do it.
Yeah, we did pay him a small fee to do it. He is a talent. All talents do get paid. Just like when you hire a DJ to do some work, they do get paid. So we paid him a small fee. And I know that everyone has been talking about this 33, 34 million. He didn't get paid that amount of money. He got paid a fraction of that. Most of the money goes into media buy. Of course, production, pre-production, filming, post-production, cleaning up the images. And it's not only one video. That's the main video. We're going to do smaller cuts of it to deal with various aspects, from accommodation to adventure to many other things. So far, we've done about 7 of those.
Okay. Such a few. I mean, I've seen the fuss, and obviously I was working towards that, how much he charged. It seems to be a little bit of a state secret. Why can't he tell us what he was paid?
It's a contractual matter. It's not a big deal. It's a very small amount of money, that he charges. Actually, less than what he usually charges for the work that he does, for other countries. So it's a contractual matter. If we're going to say he charges X amount of money, the Swiss will come and say, well, but he did this for more money or less money or whatever. So we don't want to cause anything that's unnecessary. We are fine with the work that he has done. We are happy with it. We are a very prudent company. And that's it. And remember, this is a private sector matter. And we are not using any state funds. So we are not duty bound to report to Parliament or anybody else. The matter is between us and him. And it's a contractual matter. Just like when Pick and Pay or any other company goes and do their own adverts, they don't come and disclose how much they've spent. We are prudent people. We're marketing people. Our job is marketing. So we know how much things cost, and we follow those type of things.
Sure. I mean, sometimes something will get a power out of all proportion to what it should have because of secrecy. So people, and I'm one of these people, I'm a journalist, I want to know everything. So in other words, this then may have received much more power than it should, only because it's secret. Shafiwa, let me offer you some advice. If you can find a way to give us any kind of hint of what it might have cost, just to put our curiosity to rest, you might find the whole story goes away. So if you say, for example, it cost 1/10 his usual rate, or if it cost no more than any South African celebrity would have been, or whatever, then we would know where we are, and the secrecy would go away, and the power of this would go away. So, Chafiwa, any hints you would like to give us?
Well, Stephen, as I've said, we sign contracts with many people. And many talents to do work, for us, and many contractors to do work for us. And each contract is different from the next. So I cannot go and say, well, this contract of this person costs X amount, and that person costs X amount. All the public needs to know is that we never paid him 33 million, as everyone was saying. We paid him way, 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 way less than that, which is comparable to the rate. In actual fact, it was a gift to us because we believe that we pay less than what he charges others. So it's as simple as that. I don't think there's any secrecy around this. It's a straight and simple, matter. I think the whole thing came with the whole Parliament Portfolio Committee on Tourism talking about 33 million, which was false. Trevor was never paid 33 million, not even close to that. So the whole project is a campaign. Which is, going to last until the end of February. We may even go further than that. We may spend more than 33 million. We may spend less. We may spend 50 million, depending on whether we're getting the traction that we need. It's up to the industry. If there's a traction and everybody's happy, we need to continue with it. We're going to spend more money on media buy and making sure that it penetrates, various markets. So we cannot be bound by, everyone wanting to know how much a person got paid. I don't think that's relevant. We did it, wanted to do it. We're a private sector organization. There's nothing untoward. There's no public money that has been spent. We are bound by the contract that we have signed, and we are happy with it.
Chafiwa Chifengwa, thank you very much indeed, CEO of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. All right, how do you see that this morning? 086 0002032.
Agenda setting conversations of the day.
Ibrahim in Cape Town. Hi, good morning. Police corruption, go for it.
Hi, good morning, Stephen. I am so glad to have been able to come through to you guys.
All right, what happened, Ibrahim?
Stephen, I am riddled with police corruption. I've been hijacked by 2 officers, man.
No.
I had no cases to my name. They came to my house. They know my nickname. They knew what kind of car I drove. And then, as I opened my door, within 30 seconds, they put me in handcuffs. I don't have any cases, like I said, not pending or otherwise. So they arrested me. I asked him, but what did I do? They said, Kegi, how you back? And they pushed me in a car, and they took me to a police station, whereby they threatened me. They threatened me with incarceration. It told more without bail.
And what was this for, Ibrahim? What did they accuse you of doing?
Excuse me?
What did they accuse you of doing?
Not up till today they have told me what they accused me of, Stephen. But besides the hijacking, they robbed me of my car, they took money out of my pocket, they defrauded me selling my car. What happened, what followed by that was this. I became victimized by sex. Where I stay now, I had to move from that place because they threatened me, the two first policemen, and then I had to move, so I moved. And then what happened was, I had kind of not a scuffle, but some disagreement with a neighbor. So what I did not realize was the neighbor actually, one day, as I was speaking about my case on the phone with someone, he listened in. Okay. So what he did was, he went to this police station with this altercation between me and him, and he explained to these policemen that I had cases against their members.
Okay, Ibrahim, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to leave this there. I've taken your number. These are very difficult. You're not the only person who's complained about this, but very difficult to deal with. I must just warn you. We've taken your number. Let's see if we are able to help. I'm sorry I have to leave it there. You're with SAfm leading the conversation. It's 8 o'clock. Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 38462. Now that's good news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAfm News.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, the proposed immigration policy open for public comment, and Malema hypes his party members ahead of elections. This is SAfm News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. The public has until January 19th next year to make their inputs on the proposed policy on citizenship. The Home Affairs Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, released a white paper on proposed policy for public comment yesterday. It seeks to provide a framework on the granting of residency to foreign nationals. The proposed policy will also address the protection of refugees and asylum seekers in the country. In a media briefing, Motsoaledi said the proposed policy would not contravene the United Nations laws on citizenship.
What does Section 2 of the Refugees Act say in South Africa? Among others, it says no one may be refused entry into the Republic. Tell me any country that is acting like that. It doesn't happen that way. And in South Africa, we put it in the Act. So all we are saying is we're not fighting United Nations. We want to correct our mistake by saying United Nations, bring back what we entered into with you because it was wrong. We'll enter it afresh and correct our mistakes. That's all we are saying.
A 60-year-old man is expected to appear in the Tonga Magistrates Court in Mpumalanga today on a murder charge. He handed himself to police after he allegedly shot and killed a 78-year-old man in Kamhlushwa, east of Malelane in Mpumalanga. It's alleged that the man accused the deceased of practicing witchcraft. Provincial Police spokesperson Selvi Muhlala says the suspect used his licensed firearm to shoot the victim. Close friends of the man who was brutally stabbed and killed say no amount of jail time will help heal their wounds. This as the accused in the Sibanye Stillwater murder case is expected to appear in the Western Area Magistrates Court today. The accused is alleged to have stabbed the victim multiple times outside the Leseding Hostel in Carltonville in the west of Johannesburg. The accused then took a selfie next to the corpse which then found its way to social media. These friends say they are deeply saddened.
He was killed in such a brutal way. I'm in so much pain. He killed him like he was killing a cow. I'm very hurt. He didn't deserve to be killed in the manner he was. Yes, he has been arrested, but nothing will ever be the same again. Nothing will ever be normal.
EFF leader Julius Malema has called on structures of the party to be on standby all the time to address the needs of the communities. Addressing the Northwest Ground Forces Forum at Mahikeng Civic Center, Malema cautioned his party structures against listening to disgruntled residents during election period only. Malema's address was part of the EFF's Maihlome phase ahead of next year's national and provincial elections.
The masipala Jamon Northwest, the collapse kaufela. There is no better municipality. Others are worse because they can't even generate their own income. A ground force must always be guided by revolutionary morality. Don't have your people because you're going to elections. And that after elections you don't care about your people.
Duanfontein, GP's town and surrounding areas in Johannesburg are without power following the fire that broke out at Van Beek substation in the CBD yesterday afternoon. The cause of the fire is still unknown. Johannesburg City Power spokesperson is Isaac Mangena.
The team will conduct investigations to determine the actual cause of the fire as well as the extent of the damage on the infrastructure. And the outcome obviously will determine and guide us on both the repairs and restoration plans. Most of the work will start after the substation cools off because you can imagine after the fire it's still basically billowing. The oil has spilled as well and it's also boiling as we speak. And as such, ETR can only be given in later updates. We really apologize to the residents that are affected by this for the inconvenience.
And finally, the World Health Organization says the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City, where thousands of people are reportedly trapped, has ceased to function. It says constant fighting and bombing in the area had all but knocked out the hospital's power, significantly increasing fatalities. The US and the EU have expressed deep concern. The BBC's Paul Adams reports.
The worsening situation is causing alarm among Israel's allies. In Washington, Joe Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, said America did not want to see firefights in front of hospitals with innocent people caught in the crossfire. The U.S. administration, he said, was having active consultations with the Israeli military, and the European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, urged Israel to show maximum restraint. The EU, he said, was gravely concerned about the deepening humanitarian crisis.
Recapping your top story, the public has until January 19th next year to make their inputs on the proposed policy on citizenship. Home Affairs Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi released the white paper on proposed policy for public comment yesterday. For SAfm News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 8:30.
Leander, thank you. Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 38462. For a quote, OutSurance, where you always get something out. Everyone's looking forward to Black Friday deals, but there may be an easier way to save, and it's not just a once-off saving. Simply SMS out to 38462. And if OutSurance can't beat your current car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash, or even 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. That's a monthly saving on your premium or the cash promise. SMS out to 38462. You've got nothing to lose. SMS now. OutSurance is a licensed insurer and FSB. T's and C's apply.
A very good morning to you. In your SAfm sports headlines, cricket Proteas, they are into the semi-finals of the Cricket World Cup, and rain has been forecasted for that semi-final. And we also have rugby action in the United Rugby Championship. It's the Lions who had a 24-23 win over the Scarlets. All these stories and more just before 8:30.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy in Pretoria on the M1 South. We're sitting in traffic from Stormful Road right the way down to the road works at the R21. That is a super heavy backlog. There's also a lot of congestion due to load shedding around the Erasmus Kloof and Monument Park area. Routes like the Delmas Road and Boeing and Solomon Mhlanga, those routes are really under some pressure. Crash going into Joburg on the M2 at Denver. That is causing a delay back through Heldenace and back onto the N3 off ramps. Durban, two problems going north. That earlier crash at Queen Nandi Drive on the N2 heading heading up towards the airport. That's still a backlog from the M7, the M4 at Congella, the southern freeways a crash. So that stays heavy on the run-in from Jacobs and Clarewood. And Umgedi Road, really under pressure this morning. M19 from Reservoir Hills onto Umgedi Road, passing Macro down towards Alpine Road is a long queue. And Cape Town, 2 crash scenes on the N2 around Khayelitsha. There's one going out at Muway. That's causing delay from almost the airport runway, and a big delay going inbound into a crash on the N2 at Borchard's Quarry. That's pushing traffic halfway between Muway and Spine Road. Very heavy inbound and outbound as well. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
SAfm Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
Hey, good morning. You're with SAfm Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Just an update, by the way. You heard from Maxwell earlier. He phoned. He was very worried about what he said were reports that explosives had been found. And it seemed to be quite a complicated story at the Mamelodi Sundowns game over the weekend. This was at Loftus, and of course, as you know, Sundowns won because, they're Sundowns. But it turns out, and there's a lot more confirmation, someone sent me a police statement. We see it on Twitter as well now. So thank you. So what happened was the person in charge of the pyrotechnics, the explosives, very busy time of year for them, by the way, beginning of November, and they was the person carrying these in who was sort of stopped, and somebody checked and thought, oh, I don't like this, etc. So there's nothing to it. And then what happened is he sort of showed the paperwork, and a police officer basically then accompanied him as he set up the fireworks. So that's all it was. There was no sort of nothing wrong here. It all panned out. It was the fireworks at the end of the game, which of course, as we know, Wydad Casablanca had absolutely no chance of winning because, Sundowns. And so, that's really all it was. So nice to see that ends well. We'll talk about farmers. There are all of these stories at the moment around export licenses and farmers and race. We'll talk about that. We'll talk trains in a minute. We'll talk urban gardens. And, of course, that issue around baby savers, these boxes like a hole in the wall, where if you have to abandon a baby, you put the baby in there, tell someone that there's a baby there, someone goes to check on it on a regular basis, etc. It's basically a way of trying to prevent people who have to abandon babies in the most awful circumstances you can imagine from doing it in any other way. It's sort of safe way of doing it is sort of the idea. Your views on that too. 086 000 2032. The Gauteng Social Services Social Development Department says it's trying to ban these baby savers. We'll try and find out why. 11 after 8.
Agenda-setting conversations of the day.
Well, what's going on this morning around trains? And now, PRASA, the passenger rail agency, they're introducing their sort of off-peak, if you like, their off-peak services, how much it costs you, and also just looking at their general discounts. Well, let's speak now to the spokesperson for PRASA, for the passenger rail agency of South Africa. That's Andiswa Makanda. Andiswa, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your listeners. Thank you for having me.
Most most state transport, most public transport will have a sort of off-peak rate. What do you do?
Stephen, we have say that there is an alternative mode of transport during off-peak that people can use. Hence, we're using the hashtag travel off-peak, and to sort of incentivize and encourage people to use the off-peak service. We are also discounting, offering a discount fares during off-peak.
How do you define peak and off-peak? What are the times?
Okay, Stephen, the peak is the rush hour, which would be from your 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and ending slightly just between 9 and 9:30. And then the off-peak starts at 9:30. That's when things start to slow down. A lot of people are already at school, at work. So that's your 9:30 to 2:30. And then the peak will start again at around 3. So this is a differentiate between the rush hour, the rush peak, and the quieter times.
Okay, so it's basically off-peak is 9:30 to 2:30. It's that sort of 5-hour period.
That's correct, yes, and that's where we are discounting the fares.
And some people get discounts all the time. I mean, children in uniform get a discount all the time. Is that right?
That is definitely correct, Stephen. It is a special incentive for young people who are trying to get to school using rail. We are accommodating them and giving them the discount in the way that, long distance buses used to give students discount fares if they had a student card.
How often are services running off-peak? They're not running as often as they are during the peak, or do you just use shorter trains, so fewer carriages?
It will be fewer carriages, Stephen, but also because of our signaling, also, we're not running as frequently as we would like to, but we do have a service available in the off-peak between 9:30 and 2:30 for the people who want to travel around.
And Andiswa, I don't know if you're able to help us out here. The long-distance railway lines that you used to run, I'm talking about really, I suppose, the Shosholoza Mail. You go from Joburg to Cape Town. I think it also ran Joburg to Durban. What's happening with them? I mean, I know they were discontinued at one point. Are they going to come? Are they coming back?
Stephen, that's a good question you ask, and I think your listeners would like to hear that we do have Shosholoza Mail running. It is running from Johannesburg to Messina. We're running also from Johannesburg to Queenstown. The challenge we have with Shosholoza Mail is that the lines, the intercity or the interprovincial network, 90% of it belongs to Transnet. And so we cannot run on a network that is constantly experiencing vandalism and has deteriorated over the years. We are in conversations with Transnet to see how can they assist us, because some of the routes that are not their priority are the routes that we need, and they are prioritizing certain routes that they need for their own operations. And we were able to run the train to Comrades Marathon, because the other issue we have is the access to locomotives. We've been trying to lease locomotives, very expensive exercise. We tried to own our own locomotives. Unfortunately, that contract was set aside and declared irregular. But we're trying to see how can we secure our own locomotives to pull the trains into this. So that was one of the big challenges. It's the issue of the network, the state that it's in, and the availability of reliable locomotives. So those are the two issues that we need to work on, so that we can reintroduce the Joburg to Cape Town, Joburg to Bloemfontein, and to KwaZulu-Natal. We're really working with Transnet to see how can we introduce, but we are running to Messina, we are running to Queenstown, definitely.
And I realize a lot of this is outside of your control as PRASA. And Deesa, something that may be in your control is the website for those services. Please have a look at them. I couldn't make head or tail of what it was telling me.
Of course, Stephen. We are, as part of our digitization program, if you'd seen the CAPEX that we had allocated, part of it is we want to digitize our systems, including bringing in new technologies, an app, and all of that. We are really in the dark stages, but we are going into the new era of technology.
Okay. Please, because I couldn't understand it all. And Deesa Makanda, thank you, spokesperson for the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, 8:17.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
A report in City Press, then picked up by Bloomberg yesterday, suggesting that South African farms that don't qualify under particular black economic empowerment targets will not be able to export food. And you know how big this industry is in terms of exporting food. We've seen, of course, government working to, for example, create a situation where our farmers can export lemons to China. We know how big the issue of support of exporting citrus food to Europe has been because of Spanish objections, the black spot, and all the claims that they make to try and keep our fruit out. Theo Diaga is the chair of the South African Agri Initiative. Theo, good morning.
Good morning, and what a privilege to talk to you and your listeners today.
Well, you're very welcome. Is it true that farms that are deemed, as the reports put it, too white, in other words, farms, so the companies really, that have not complied with particular black economic empowerment rules are not allowed to export food?
It's only partially true. What this is about, what the media coverage yesterday is about, and what caused all this anger was the gazetting of some regulations pertaining to exports of a small range of products to the EU and to the UK. Those are, for example, canned fruit and juices and sweetened strawberries and those. What is angering farmers is that if it is allowed for even a small range of products and only to those two destinations, the principle has been established, and nothing will then stop government to expand it into any other areas or to other products.
So this has been gazetted as a regulation. It's not a law. There's been no public consultation that I'm aware of on this. Is that right?
No, it is only regulations, and it is not the first time these regulations have been published. Last year in SAI, we had our lawyers engaging the lawyers of the PPECB, that is the agency facilitating exports of fresh produce, when they also tried to actually harvest data to see how many farmers have a turnover of more than 10 million and exactly what the implications would be, and then they withdrew it. So this year it was gazetted, and we actually did not pick up those gazettes. We only saw it late last week.
There's a lot going on here. So, I mean, we've looked, for example, at water use, right? So these are the use of rivers for irrigation and who has water licenses and who doesn't. And we've seen, for example, the vast majority, I mean, it's like 85% of this water is used by farmers that are deemed to be white-owned. Now, many of them are family-owned, and the definition of family is not just sort of, 4 or 5 people, but much bigger than that, intergenerational cousins, etc. And then you also have farms that are owned by companies, so it's quite a complex set of things you're looking at. What is clear to me is that there hasn't been very much transformation in this sector in a big way. So what I'm trying to get to is, could there actually be an argument for government to do this, to say, nothing else we've tried has worked? Even when we try and give away try and give licenses, try and sort of have some kind of transformation requirement for the last water use licenses that are left, which is a tiny fraction of the water that is used, there's huge opposition. We have to do something, and this is what we're doing.
It's an absolute national imperative that we develop a class of profitable black farmers. There's a very good reason why we have so miserably failed to do this. And the biggest part of our problem is in the department itself. We simply don't have the capacity. There's too many spaces open for corruption and nepotism. Let me tell you, and I engage with our black members every week. I want to see the white farmer who can make a success out of the conditions in which we expect our beneficiaries of land reform to make a success. And if I talk about success, I mean measurable in terms of profitability and competitiveness. The very foundation of transformation in agriculture is fundamentally wrong. It is not about the surface area we have transferred. It is not about the size of the farms. It is not about the number of people we've established in the sector. It is about whether they are successful business people on the land. And government has not spent anything yet to ensure that we have created this class of profitable black farmers. And to do it now through these BEE requirements will also not work. There's nothing broad-based about black economic empowerment in agriculture so far. Those who benefit are really...
Bayer Leverkusen equaled the best ever start to a Bundesliga season. They returned to the top of the table with a 4-0 home win over Union Berlin. The victory means Leverkusen have collected 31 points of a possible 33 points after 11 matches, equal to the record set by Pep Guardiola's Bayern Munich, and that was in 2015-2016. Elsewhere, Harry Kane scored as Bayern Munich survived a scare to beat promoted Heidenheim 4-2. Here's Bayern Munich coach Thomas Tuchel.
Well, that's actually what he does. It's his pure strength to finish. He's a natural finisher. He's a genuine finisher. He doesn't feel the pressure. He loves scoring. That's what he does since a decade on the highest level, and he continues here. You see
the dropping of the baby in the box becomes unlawful because a CYCC or a child and youth care center cannot accept children out of the communities. Basically, there has to be a legal order that confirms that the child can be placed in a CYCC. Further to that, we're saying private temporary safe care homes need to be assessed. They need to be vetted against the National Child Protection Register as well as the National Sexual Offences Register in order to make sure that they are able to take the children in line with what the Act is prescribing. Now, we are always saying to baby savers is, we have a child protection system. Let's try and strengthen that child protection system, who are made up of various stakeholders. Now, the department is funding, for instance, 93 child protection organizations. These organizations are designated, meaning they render a basket of services to families, to communities, to be able to say, let's receive the child through the child protection system in these child protection organizations. In addition to that, after hours is when a mom will decide it's too overwhelming for her and she wants to relinquish her baby. That is not a problem. The Act makes provision for mothers to relinquish their responsibility. But all we are saying is, let's do it the proper way in line with the Children's Act and through child protection system. Another key stakeholder is our Department of Health, because most moms give birth in hospitals. Now, we're saying that the hospital has hospital social workers. They have a protocol. Should a mom decide, I don't want the baby, I cannot afford the baby, and safely relinquish the baby and her responsibilities in the health facility. And if all else fails, then mom can also approach South African Police Services. Now, the issue that was raised is mom wishes to remain anonymous. Now, unfortunately, if you look at the Children's Act, it is so clear. It says that the child's best interest is of paramount importance. What that means to you and I is the child's interest supersedes everybody else, including that of the rights of the mother to remain anonymous. But we're saying, Mom, if we know the situation out there, we know the social issues you are being faced with, relinquish your child safely. The last point that I would like to make is, what we've noticed in Gauteng province, there is a trend that is emerging where children are placed in adoptions. Now, that's where we may say abandoned child, let's give the child a better life in adoption. What we're seeing now is that 10, 11 years later, when a child who has had a mom who abandoned the child because of maybe having drugs while she was being pregnant, engaged in alcohol and substance abuse, 11 years or 10 years later, the adoptive parent is now approaching the children's court and saying, I don't want the child. The child has uncontrollable behaviors. The child has severe behavior conduct disorder.
I'm sorry, Yvonne. Yvonne, I've let you speak for some time, and I don't think we're talking here at all about what happens 10 or 11 years down the line. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just Yvonne. I'm sorry. I'm going to put terms on this. Okay. What we are talking about is you've quoted extensively from the Act. Okay, that's fine. Yes. I understand that you have a responsibility to do that. It seems to me that people now are abandoning babies in pit latrines on the side of the road. Okay, in other words, we understand, we know that there are some people, some mothers, I'm presuming often very young mothers actually, who are desperate. No one wants to do this. They're desperate and they don't want to face a person when they do it. And I mean, throughout humanity, people will talk about doorstep children. You find it in every society, right? This happens. So what we need to do, and you quoted the law correctly, of course, that the guiding principle is what is best for the child. That must be correct. So does that not mean we need to ensure that there are safe places where people can abandon a baby, and because we need to understand the position that these young women are in, generally women, that they need to be anonymous places? I don't like that, but it is still better for the children that is the case. Can we accept that?
All we're saying is relinquish your responsibilities as a mother, but do it in a safe space within that's what I'm saying. Child protection system.
Hold on. Hold on. A baby saver is a safe place, yes?
I started off by saying the baby saver concept is within child and youth care centers. Already at that point, child and youth care centers cannot accept babies from communities directly. It must go via the children's court. Similarly, I mentioned if a child gets placed in a private temporary safe care, again, the Act is not being followed or as per the prescriptions of the Act, because private temporary safe care parents need to be vetted, they need to be screened, and they need to be affiliated to a child protection organization. Not anybody can just become a baby, have a baby saver box.
But these people are registering the children. It's not like government doesn't know they exist. They go to a hospital, they will be registered there. We're not talking about some sort of secret trade in which people don't know what's happening. Government is aware of them, yes?
No, that is the problem. All the babies that are coming via baby savers, that is what we are trying to establish. How many babies were abandoned through baby savers? Let's take a period from April to October this year. How many babies have been abandoned through baby savers? First point. Second point would be, how many of those babies, what is the current legal status of those babies? Because in accordance to the department statistics, we've noted for the period April to September, only 13 babies were abandoned. So I'm asking the question to baby savers is, where are those thousands of babies that you say are being abandoned? Where are they? What is the current legal status of these babies? Thank you, sir.
Okay, Yvonne, please call me Stephen. My name is Stephen. Please don't call me sir. Here's the thing, right? Okay, so I don't think that a 15-year-old woman, 15-year-old teenage girl, cares about the law when they're in this position. They are utterly desperate. And the thing that we have to absolutely avoid is children being abandoned with no care. Right, so we have to absolutely avoid the pit latrine story, the other stories, some of the horrific things that we've seen. So we have to avoid that. And it would seem to follow to me, from what I know, and I'm not an expert, you are, some of our other guests are, it would seem to follow for me that the way to do that is to make baby savers, as difficult as this is, to make them available and to make them safe and to make them registered with you and to make that registration process, by the way, very easy so that you're aware of what's going on. You can have a video feed, whatever it is that you want. But would you agree that we need to make them available and we need to make them freely available so that we stop children being abandoned on the side of the road?
I think what is important is that we need to engage baby savers. And what we've done up until now is we've been engaging through the media with baby savers. For me, that is an important point. Again, location of the baby saver boxes. Where exactly are they? Are they
Yvonne, I understand that that's important, but do you agree with my main point, that they need to be available and freely available?
Baby savers?
Yes.
No, we're saying relinquish your child within the child protection system.
To a 15-year-old girl, she's already failed by the child protection system, is my point.
Baby savers, we are going to have mums that are going to abandon their children. That's the reality of the current society. Why not take it from a different angle and say, let's empower? Because we're making provision of services within even a school environment, family environments, through our organizations that we're funding in our communities. What about strengthening and empowering and giving enough information? So even that 15-year-old child, teenager, can make a decision when it comes to the well-being of the baby. That's what we're saying. Let's empower people with enough information.
Your systems have failed already. I realize they're failing in a very difficult society and the load is too high. But what I'm trying to say is, on what basis do you think that there's a better system that government will be able to do if it can't do it now?
It's not just government system. It's about working together with our NPOs in strengthening the child protection system. That's why we fund 93 child protection organizations with the aim of being an extension of government. Government cannot do this alone. You are absolutely right. We need the partners. We need to create awareness, and we need to get down to every community and empower them with information so that they are able to make better informed decisions when it comes to the care and protection of children. Every single one of us.
Yvonne, thank you very much indeed for your time. Yvonne Dienerin is responsible for Children Protection Services at the Gauteng Department of Social Development. You were there, SAfm, 14 minutes now to 9. Continue a mediated conversation around baby savers. Luke Lamprecht is the Advocacy Manager for Women and Men Against Child Abuse. Luke, good morning. I appreciate you stepping in at the last minute for us.
That's a pleasure, Mr. Grootes.
How do you feel about the baby saver issue? How important are they?
Look, I think everything that Yvonne said is correct. I think that none of us want babies to be relinquished to people who are, number one, not vetted, not following the law, trading in babies for adoption. So I don't think anybody has an issue with that. I think what people are not looking at is the fact that the point you made is probably the most critical point. So I did I'm still doing my Master of Sciences research at the Department of Forensic Pathology, and I'm looking at the missing child murders in the city of Johannesburg. And these babies that you refer to that are essentially abandoned for death. And I think when the law criminalized abandonment, I think they were clearly directed at people abandoning their children for death, not safely relinquishing them because they don't feel they can access government services for various reasons. Foreign nationals, the shame of being a teenage mother, many, many complex reasons. But in addition to these babies being abandoned for death, from these late-term termination of pregnancies, the guys who advertise on the street poles, those babies are being discarded near health services. So the fact that there are health services there, the question is why are, because even mentioned, we need the mothers need to access health services, but they choose not to. Why do they choose not to? And the second element, which is the most disturbing part for me, is that some of these babies who are abandoned for death have not been left to die. They've been murdered. So in other words, they have skull fractures, blunt force injuries, cracked ribs, etc. So it's not that they've just been abandoned because they've been terminated and you sort of getting rid of the terminated fetus. These are babies up to the age of sometimes as much as 6 months.
Sure. I suppose the question is, what would happen if if most of these baby savers were closed or the number was reduced? Would that lead to more children dying in the longer run, do you think? And I realize that can be hard to assess.
No, look, there's no way of saying that for sure, but the thing I can tell you from the city of Johannesburg is you take the statistics from, for example, one of the baby savers in the city of Johannesburg in Hillbrow, where I work, and they will receive, say, 3 babies in the baby saver, 2 from the police and 1 from hospital. Let's say 5, 6 babies. The mortuary will receive 20. So the truth is that there are still more babies dying than babies being saved. So in fact, there is not sufficient of any service to save these babies, whether it's baby savers, child protection organizations, agencies that deal with preventing teenage pregnancies. I mean, these children really are just the face of the failure of our entire reproductive health system and family planning in this country.
Did you mean to say, Luke, I don't know if you meant a month or a year, that for every 6 children that are saved, probably 20 corpses of children are found?
A month.
Sure.
In Johannesburg. Not a year, no, a month.
The other aspect of this, of course, is that baby savers only work if people know that they're there. So if a Gauteng department were to say that these can no longer function, people may still keep them operating, but they won't advertise them, which will have the same effect.
Undoubtedly. I mean, the thing about the idea that relinquishing a baby safely is tantamount to the abandonment of a child on the street for death is just the two cannot equate to each other. I do absolutely agree that the baby savers need to follow the law. Children need to be registered. They need to not traffic these children via private adoptions for them to get sent overseas. I agree with all of that. But I think that is a smaller element of the bigger problem. And Stephen, I don't want to sort of be disparaging to some of the mothers you have been very compassionate towards. But I believe that some of these pregnant mothers, for lots of reasons, trauma, rape, blesses, many complex reasons. I don't actually believe that they care about those children because they've discarded them and they have, in some instances, actively murdered them. So, I mean, the concept of a country, or in my case, a city where I work, where children's births are not celebrated and their deaths not mourned is tragic. Because those mothers who don't care about their children, that they either abandon for death or murder, there must have been something in their childhoods and them being raised where they can't attach to children they give birth to.
Luke Lamprecht, thank you. From Women and Men Against Child Abuse. In a moment, Dr. Shahida Omar.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A couple of issues on the highways into central Joburg this morning. One is a taxi fire on the Maikwana Kalani just before Houghton Drive. Traffic remains very heavy coming through from the Santon area, from Grayston Drive is where we hit that backlog. Also, collision on the N12 and R24 routes after they merge going into Galilee, so both routes under pressure. And the crash at Denver on the M2 inbound, still causing a delay coming off the N3 at Heldon-Ace interchange. Pretoria's N1 is starting to ease, but it's still a queue from as far back as Atterbury down to the R21. And Durban's crash on the N2 North up by Queen Nandi Drive, which backed everything up this morning, has finally been cleared. The N2 North remains busy as the backlog of that queue runs through Spaghetti Junction up into the roadworks. And quite busy around Cape Town this morning. There's crash scenes on the N1 inbound at Brighton Road. That's your first queue coming in from Justenburg. Then a crash before Gil Basson, so a second queue from Belleville as you come in towards that sort of Parow area. And then crash scenes at Khayelitsha. There's one on the N2 outbound at Meway. That's causing a delay through the R300. And a crash involving a pedestrian before you get to Borchard's Quarry. All lanes are open, but it's a big backlog again coming in from Khayelitsha. And it may be load shedding related. The R44 having left Somerset West is a heavy queue on your way to Stellenbosch. Big queue there towards the Jamestown area. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
It's about a little more than just an X on that ballot paper. It's about SouthGov knowing what I want, where I'm going, and who I want to take with on this journey. To me, it's not just a vote. It's my democracy. I own it. So show up and register for what you stand for. From Giyani to Umlazi, Pitori to Matatiel. Bring your green bar-coded ID, smart card or temporary ID certificate. Stations open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 18 to 19 November 2023. Or register online by going to elections.org.za or call 0800 11 8000. It's your democracy. Own it. Brought to you by the IEC.
Open the Absa Cash Invest Tracker account and earn the best rates in the market. More than the top 10 money market funds' average returns. Enjoy unmatched advantages at an interest rate of 8.9% per annum. Plus, if you open your account today, you could win your share of 15 million rand in luxury travel experiences for two. Yes, you heard right. A trip for you and your partner. My bank does that. Open yours today in less than 5 minutes on the banking app at your nearest Absa branch or consult your private banker or call 0860 111 515. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Have you ever noticed how unique the rugby ball is?
You should check out Head High.
The rise of junior rugby stars Mana and Tai.
Vince is not just their stepfather, he's their coach.
Catch the brothers' dream of the black jersey, Head High, every Sunday at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com.
Hashtag Rugby Drama Galore. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Mediated conversation on SAfm.
Continue a mediated conversation this morning at 5 minutes to 9 around baby savers. Dr. Shahida Omar is the clinical director at the Teddy Bear Foundation. Dr. Omar, good morning. It's a very distressing topic on so many different levels. There are many elements to it. When a person decides they have to abandon a baby, what kind of position are they in?
So I think you raised such a critical issue. One needs to look at the intention behind the act. These persons, these mothers are desperate. They are so desperate, they're frustrated. They actually have no recourse to any kind of support. So, the dumping of a baby, we understand is illegal. But if we look at these mothers are actually trying to protect their babies because the situation is rather complex. If we look at unintended consequences, We are working with a lot of teen mothers, child pregnant learners who have found themselves in very compromising situations. And I think my learned colleague alluded to the family planning, sexual reproductive health and rights circumstances where these mothers have actually been turned away, frowned upon, the stigma, the humiliation, the fear of reprisal by going to legal law enforcement. So if we look at the situation, it is so complex. It's not a clear-cut answer. But the most important thing here is that the mothers want to save the lives of these babies and therefore go to baby savers. So this is an essential service. I agree with what Yvonne Desmond-Ryan from Department of Social Development spoke to. It's about protecting children. But I think if we work in partnership with civil society, NGOs, people like Baby Savers work in collaboration with DSD, there's better hope for children to live because the right to life is what we're focusing on. And as Luke alluded to, there's so many deaths of babies. In order to protect and prevent and promote the best interest of children, it is something that we need to look at more closely and to understand that these are not villains. These mothers are not murderers. They're not deliberately doing this. They're doing it because they don't see out. They don't have any options or choices or alternatives available for them to seek a better life for their baby.
Dr. Omar, it seems to me that any person who's making this decision is probably making it alone. We're talking about a young woman who feels that they are alone. And I mean, to say that you can't use a baby saver or that we're going to reduce the number of baby savers available, I don't know what the consequences of that would be, but I can't see that the consequence of that would make it easier for these young women.
Absolutely not. If we look at the consequences, the potential implications of leaving babies in the veld, in latrines, in derelict places, there's definitely going to be more deaths than right to life. And even looking at the mental health of the mother, a lot of them are children themselves, are teenagers, and then to live through this guilt for the rest of their life, the mental health being compromised, and always having this sense of having abandoned this baby and not having to deal with it. So I think we need to appreciate and understand that working together, working and engaging, because I do believe that there are opportunities if social development not only works with NGOs or organizations and affiliation of baby savers, but also listening to the mothers out there, teen mothers, speaking to them, because we know there are cases of rape and abuse, and we cannot dismiss or discount it, where out of frustration, out of anger, out of humiliation, the fear of stigma, these babies are abandoned because in working with these child pregnant learners, we've learned that they've hidden the pregnancy from their immediate family till the end, where they were desperate. And these are the realities we have to be aware of, that we cannot dismiss what is actually happening on the ground.
Dr. Shahida Omar, thank you so much. Clinical Director of the Teddy Bear Foundation, really appreciate the time. My thanks also to Luke Lamprecht, the Advocacy Manager for Men and Women Against Child Abuse. And starting us off today, Yvonne Desmond-Ryan, responsible for Children Protection Services at the Gauteng Department of Social Development. Well, I'm sure you'll have views on that very difficult issue, as I said, baby savers at the moment, and also just gets to the heart of many, many difficult things that we actually see in our society at the moment. Well, there's a lot more to come. Kathy is, of course, next. We will be back with you tomorrow. From Doob, Stanza, Zelma, myself, look after yourself. It's Monday morning. You're with SAfm, leading the conversation. It's 9 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAfm News.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, targeted killing of teachers in Lusikisiki has community worried, and Good Party mulls class action over electricity tariffs. This is SAfm News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. Civil rights organizations in Lusikisiki in the Eastern Cape have called on the presidency to declare a state of emergency in the small town and the surrounding villages. This comes after a series of murders mainly directed at educators, women and children in the area. The region is allegedly populated with drugs and criminal activities that continue to terrorize the communities. The latest incident is the brutal killing of Sobaba High School female school teacher on Friday. Sobaba High School principal Veli Wefuzani says teachers, learners and the whole community is traumatized.
The learners were crying tears yesterday and the parents were crying tears yesterday. And it's worse when you can notice that the car is in Flagstaff, then the body of the deceased is in Churchill. Those are different places. So we are so scared. I don't want to lie.
Meanwhile, Director of Lusikisiki Fight Against Gender-Based Violence, Kwalo Matandabuzo, has urged the Presidency Office to declare a curfew in Lusikisiki for 3 months or more. He believes killings and drugs will only come to an end if the government deploys all strategic law enforcement agencies in the area.
We are saying here as the community, no, this should be the last in terms of the killings in Lusikisiki, the murders. We are also saying that how we would like that curfew or a state of emergency is declared by the Honorable President so that from the evening, the period that will be determined by the Cabinet, at least for a period of not less than 3 months, we are under the curfew so that only the emergency services operate at night and the people that are looking for those and other services that need to be done.
The Good Party says it's considering a class action against the city of Cape Town for the high electricity tariffs. It wants the city council's decision to be reversed and residents to be reimbursed. Good says while 90% of South Africans have access to electricity since 1994, electricity is unaffordable. The party was addressing the media at the Cape Town City Hall following the outcomes of its inaugural elective conference on Saturday. Good Party Secretary General is Brett Heron.
So the City of Cape Town